Good afternoon. Today is January 30th. Welcome to the bill hearings for the Ways and Means. What day is it? Calling our first bill, House Bill 258, Delegate Wells.
I love this view. Chair Atterbury, colleagues of the Ways and Means Committee, a pleasure to be here today. For the record, I am Delegate Wells, and I'm here to express my strong support for House Bill 258, which seeks to enhance the administration and membership of the West North Avenue Development Authority. WNADA was established and it was created to advance housing, economic development, transportation, and neighborhood revitalization along the 600 to the 3200 blocks of West North Avenue. The catchment area of West North Avenue Development Authority has experienced devastating long-term economic, housing, transportation, and neighborhood neglect in the historic Old West Baltimore communities. And for context, as I've raised before in the committee, 56% of vacant residential and commercial properties in Baltimore City are located within the catchment area of West North Avenue development. These conditions hinder the state and city from fully realizing its economic growth potential through revenue, which is the purpose of this committee, derived from property sales and income taxes. On Wednesday, January 31st, 2024, the authority submitted the West North Avenue Comprehensive Plan, which outlined strategies to promote restorative justice and equitable community development. The plan focuses on enhancing housing, public spaces, mobility, and economic opportunities for one of Baltimore City's most disadvantaged areas. House Bill 258 clarifies the powers and duties of the authority while instituting necessary limitations. It also exempts the authority from certain legal provisions, requires specific actions related to its financial operations, and provides tax exemptions under defined circumstances. Furthermore, the bill establishes the West North Avenue Development Fund as a special non-lapsing fund to support these initiatives. This legislation is a critical step toward fostering sustainable development and addressing historical inequities in our city. I urge you to support House Bill 258 to help advance the transformative vision for West North Avenue, and I thank you for your consideration of House Bill 258. And also note that this bill was passed by the committee last year as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Wells? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 258. House Bill 327, Delegate Bond-Smith. And while you're approaching, I will say that all bills that are sponsor only are because the committee heard them last session and possibly also the prior session.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and of course to your lovely Vice Chair in absentia, and to the storied and illustrious Ways and Means Committee. My name is Vaughn Stewart. This is House Bill 327. This is indeed a reintroduction of a bill that you all have heard before, and so I apologize for being somewhat repetitive from past years. The issue here, this bill came to me several years ago from a constituent. His name is Neil. Neil, I think by now is over 90 years old, and he's like a lot of our constituents. He bought long-term care insurance in the late 90s and early 2000s, and he thought that's what he was supposed to do. He didn't want the state to have to pick up his Medicaid bill, and he didn't have enough money to pay out of pocket for his long-term care expenses. So he was at that time relatively young, and he started paying long-term care insurance premiums. What he didn't realize, and what none of these people in this group of Marylanders realized, is that the premiums and the plans that they were offered at that time were based on faulty actuarial math from the insurance companies. Now, this is not me shading the insurance companies or throwing sand in their eyes or anything. They admit this. They actually are apologetic about it. They feel bad. They've made all that they basically did some bad math in the 90s, and they charged too little for these plans. So there's this whole population of seniors that still exists. Now it's a dwindling population. This population is quite old these days. But it's a population of seniors who bought into the plan, and then we're facing, because the plans were initially underpriced, they've had to face like 15%, 10%, 12%, 8% increases on their premiums every single year. So these are seniors that are on a fixed income. They did the right thing, and through no fault of their own, they've had a really hard time hanging on to these plans because what they thought was going to cost them only a few $100s a year actually cost them now several $1,000s a year. So this bill is a tax credit for them. Now, you might be thinking, Vaughn, we have this massive structural deficit. Why are you proposing a bill that's going to cost us more money? Isn't that the exact opposite of what we need? Well, aha, I have finally done, it took me several years, but have done crunched the numbers with the help of the folks at the MIA and the insurance industry on this, and I do believe this bill is actually revenue positive. Here's how we get there. The overall cost of this program, which would provide an average of $400 annually for a tax credit to this population of seniors who are both relatively low income, they make less than $100,000 a year, and they're relatively old. They're 85 plus. So that pool of people we estimate is going to be at most about 7,500 people a year times 400 a year. So if you check my math there, that's about a cost of $3 million per year. But we are phasing out an existing tax credit for long-term care insurance that doesn't really work very well, according to everyone I've talked to, that costs $2 million a year. Now, what that program does is provide $250 to people who sign up for long-term care insurance in the first place. But since long-term care insurance now is so expensive, no one's really relying on this $250. I don't think it's actually moving the needle to get people to sign up for this at all. So we phased that out. It costs $2 million. My new program for this population of seniors who have really been kind of boondoggled here, it costs $3 million. So now we have a $1 million difference. So how is it revenue positive? Okay, I hope you guys are still with me. This took a long time, and I had to go to law school because I'm not good at math. Here's how we here's how we come up with revenue positive. There's currently about 75,000 people who bought these policies prior to 2004 when the math was bad. There's 75,000 people that exist currently. We think about 7,500 of them will sign up for this credit. We know that the cost of Medicaid right now is $180,000 on year for Marylanders. If people drop their plans, because they can no longer afford them, the average cost is about $2,600. If they drop their plans, that means that Medicaid is going to necessarily pick up the cost of their long-term care insurance policy, which means that it will take exactly 5 people, not necessarily 5 new people, just 5 people out of the 75,000 people who are in this pool to decide to keep their plan instead of drop into Medicaid for this to be revenue positive. Because the 5 people times $180,000 a year of Medicaid expenses is now more than $1 million. Okay. I'm happy to break this down within like an email, you know? Like, you don't have to just like sort of like try to calculate this on your own. But essentially what I'm saying here is that there's a population of Maryland seniors who were wronged by the insurance industry. We have the opportunity to both make their lives and on their last few years on the planet a little bit easier when they're on a fixed income, while also providing a little bit of extra tax revenue for the state through Medicaid savings. I think that it's very reasonable to expect that 5 Marylanders per year, if they used to pay $2,600 a month and now they pay $2,200 a month, I think it's reasonable to say that that cost savings for someone on a fixed income of $400 or $500 a year is enough to have 5 people decide not to drop their coverage and go into Medicaid. And again, it doesn't have to be 5 new people every year. It could be literally the same 5 people out of 75,000 every year. Now, if it's more than 5, then we're really cooking with gas and we're having even more Medicaid savings. So that's the bill. I appreciate you guys hearing it year after year after year. I'm happy to provide all these numbers in an email, and I really appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you, Delegate. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I don't believe we have any unfavorable testimony, and I think this might be sponsor only, so that ends the hearing on House Bill 327. Calling the next bill, Delegate Grammer, House Bill 355. Is Delegate Grammer here? All right, we have 2 bills for Delegate Grammer, so we'll come back to him. Next up, we have Delegate Martinez, House Bill 414. Also not present yet. Delegate Young, you're up. House Bill 149, Income Tax Subtraction Modification Child Support Payments. And you can bring up anyone that you have signed up. Okay, great.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Delegate Kaylin Young, here on behalf of House Bill 149. The bill is very simple. It seeks to help us make sure that as prices are going up, as we are thinking about revenue generation and potentially increasing burdens on families as necessary, to make sure that we are not burdening those individuals who have to take care of their children, to make sure that children are benefited within our tax structure. The bill is simple. It simply would move child support payments from being post-tax to pre-tax. In the same manner that when your 401k comes out, it comes out pre-tax from the gross, and then you are taxed subsequently. It would move those child support payments to that portion of your income, that pre-tax portion, so that way your taxable burden for the non-custodial parents can go down. We understand that non-custodial parents still have to carry a significant responsibility when it comes to taking care of their children. And we want to make sure that they have those tools available to them as well in the tax code. Furthermore, we have to understand that this is an investment in our children, and there is going to be a revenue cost, of course, but allowing for families to be able to take care of their children, I think, is at the highest, one of our highest and most important concerns. There are some concerns that were raised in some of the testimony that was submitted in written, namely that there may be some administrative concerns. I would push back on those administrative concerns to say that we have verification methods to ensure that we know when a payment is made appropriately. So those exist, and we can iron out any subsequent or other issues therein pertaining to working with the Department of Human Services and the comptrollers and the Office of the Comptroller to make sure that those can flow freely. There's another additional concern that was raised about making a local option. I actually just disagree with that. I think that this is a state-level policy if it's going to pass, so that way, no matter where you live in the state, you get the same benefit. And that's essentially the point of the bill, is to make sure that children are put at the forefront, to make sure that parents, no matter whether you're custodial or non-custodial, can see the benefit in our tax structure, and that everybody has the tools that they need, and they can put the most of their resources towards compliance with whatever court-ordered child support that they have. It'll also help make sure that people do pay that child support indeed. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I will turn it over to Chris.
Christopher Dews here from Cornerstone, representing both the Center for Urban Families and Out for Justice, both of which are organizations that disproportionately help individuals in Baltimore City and around the state who are facing situations where they are paying child support. We support the payment of child support. We support taking care of children. And as a whole, we just generally support individuals having a little bit of tax relief as they make these payments. We want to thank Delegate Young for sponsoring this piece of legislation, and just know that we have a very, very large member base in Baltimore that is experiencing lots and lots of child support payments. We just sincerely think that this is a really interesting and nuanced way to help these non-custodial parents. And generally, as the delegate already mentioned, that as these payments are made, it then goes to help the children, which is our focus overall, and then also assisting the custodial parents in ensuring that those payments can be made. So I could talk longer, but I won't. I'll just stop there and just say that we think this is going to be good for families. We know that there is a strong fiscal note to it. We're happy to kind of work with the committee members as this conversation continues to grow and emerge, and we urge a favorable report. Thank you for your time.
Questions? Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's certainly an interesting concept, and I'm not a tax expert, but if somebody's paying hypothetically $1,000 a month in child support, would that credit be larger than the parent that has primary custody? Would that be a larger tax credit than what the other parent is getting for having primary custody?
No, let's clarify. We're not talking about a tax credit. What we're talking about is a subtraction modification.
Right.
So if you make $100,000 a year and you were to pay $1,000 per month, then your taxable burden would go down to $88,000 per month.
Correct. So is that a larger benefit than somebody that has the primary responsibility for the children and are just claiming the deduction for a child or whatever on their taxes? What has a bigger value?
The bigger value would certainly be with the individual who has the custodial. Remember that we're, again, what we just said, we're talking about a subtraction modification. That money that is then received by the custodial parent is not taxed. So they're already going to get, for the support of the child, that money that goes directly to the money and is no longer taxed separately. Additionally, the custodial parent gets the child tax credit. Any correlating tax credits that pertain to having a child, the custodial parent generally is the person that gets it. And then and when you're talking about who claims the child for a dependency, that's the custodial parent. As it currently stands, the non-custodial parent has the responsibilities, but they don't have the ability to either, they may be limited on the time that they can have with the child, and they have the obligation to make the payment. This is one option, one opportunity that we can say to the non-custodial parent that we recognize that you are continuing to be a parent in the same manner. And again, this is for parents that are in compliance, right? Yes. So, we're recognizing their contributions and their investment in their children, which we need to make sure that all parents are participating in the rearing of their child. And if they are able to do those things, then yes, we will go ahead and give you the benefit of having a subtraction modification, so that way your bottom line can be better and your household too can be best resource for the child.
I'm still a little confused on it, but I'll do some
Happy to talk.
digging myself. Thank you.
I thank you for the question.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I understand, thank you for bringing the bill, and I understand, certainly understand the intent of the bill. And so my questions are kind of along the line of what Delegate Hartman have. There's also no income ceiling or anything like that on this. So if this person makes $250,000 a year and they pay $125,000, and I'm just, again, pulling numbers out of my head, $125,000, then their income would be reduced, their subtraction modification would be reduced. They would only be paying taxes on $125,000 of their income if they were paying $125,000 in child support.
Sure, and I think that was in the MACO, I can't remember which one, opposition testimony. And I would certainly be open to the committee's wisdom if we wanted to provide limits on what it looked like. If you think about the federal tax code, the first $12,000 that you make is untaxed. And so I would be open to something similar. If you're paying up to $500 a month will be untaxed. That's what the committee's wisdom was. I mean, the goal is to get relief and support families. That is a measure of doing it. And of course, we have a budgetary challenge that we have to face. So if we decided that we wanted to limit it, I would be open to looking at that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, and if I may, just in agreement with the delegate, the reason why our clients specifically support this is because we see it as a strong incentive structure to ensure that the non-custodial parents actually make the payments. We know that there's a lot of conversations around that, but we want to ensure that, as they're making payments, that there's a level of at least acknowledgement from the state that, hey, that you're doing a good thing here. If there are caps that need to be put in, we are just doubling down 100% in agreement with the wisdom of the committee and how you guys want to move forward.
And I appreciate you saying that, because that is definitely a concern where your child tax credits or your dependent tax credit would not certainly equal up to what these amount of deductions could save for someone just because a court order mandated for child support versus we all pay money, whether we're a single mom raising our kids who lost a spouse, or whether we're, two parents barely getting by. We all pay money to raise our kids that we can't deduct up to, those levels and do a subtraction modification on those. So I definitely appreciate the intent of the bill and supporting kids, and I appreciate you being open to any changes if we need it. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'd like to just let's give us some real numbers, right? If I recall correctly, and George committee counsel could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but let's just say you were paying $10,000 a month in $10,000 a year, in child support, and you had this modification. That $10,000 is taxed at what, 4%, roughly? So we're talking about, let's just use 4% for an easy number, right? It's somewhere in that round. That's $400 for the year that the custodial parent benefits actually. So we're not talking about something that matches what the child tax credit is, which is thousands of dollars. So while you may get that benefit, the actual benefit that they realize in real money in their pocket is actually much smaller than what the custodial parent already is entitled to.
Yeah, I think the concern was just leaving it open-ended with no caps or anything like that.
Absolutely, sure.
Thank you.
Delegate Roberts.
Hey, fellow committee member. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to be, clear on what's actually being proposed. So you want a tax modification for the non-custodial parent. So that would mean that taking care of one's child would be somewhat on taxpayers, is that right?
So right now, when child support is determined, it's determined on the gross income of both parents, right? And then it's a formula that's used, and the parent that has more gross income generally has to pay the parent with less gross income and/or who is the primary custodial parent. You know, the formulas work a lot, different ways. But long story short, is that individual has to pay the custodial parent. What this simply says is those payments that are going to the non-custodial, that are going from the non-custodial parent to the custodial parent are now pre-tax. In other words, when you pay your 401k every paycheck, that comes out and then you are taxed by the state and the feds. It would be the same circumstance for your child support, for the child support payments of the non-custodial parent. They would be able to deduct it. So if you make $100,000, you put $10,000 into your 401k, you pay $10,000 in child support, that's $20,000 that's deducted from your taxable income, and so you're taxed at $80,000. And there will be no changes subsequent for the custodial parent. Nothing changes for the custodial parent.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So just to clarify, Delegate Roberts, child support is determined by the amount of time you have with the child, access with the child, parenting time, and then the formula is thrown into that based on the incomes of the parties. Delegate Wu.
Thank you for the clarification, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The delegate, thank you for the bill. I have a question about the digital social media. How do we determine, for example, like we charge certain percentage of their gross income? Does other state doing this?
You said other states doing this?
Yeah.
No, this is, my understanding is this is novel.
This is something new, right?
That's correct.
Where that impact, they may pull out from the state, say, I'm not operating in Maryland, and then just we lose that service for a lot of Marylanders. Is that a concern?
Can you, I wasn't able to catch the question.
For example, maybe some social media platform, they profit in other states, but not in Maryland, right?
Sure.
They may say, I'm not earning money from your state, I'm just pull out your service. I remember certain years ago, Google pulled out their service in Maryland for some services, right? Mm-hmm. That caused a huge problem with a lot of users. Will that be a potential problem?
I'm not sure there would be a problem with folks leaving Maryland or, certainly there's a concern about the administration of out-of-state custody orders. Mm-hmm. The bill does contemplate that those would be able to be managed as well or would be qualified also. But oftentimes those out-of-state orders, when they are enforced by the, by the government, are enforced by the Department of Human Services. And again, so that's where I think the verification can be managed well. Certainly where there are payments that may be happening outside of that process, that's going to just require us to continue to work with the Comptroller's Office on what that verification would look like. But I'm not sure about how...
for example, right, I look at the article, Google may be classified under this category. I look around, right? So what happens, Google said, I'm not serving Marylanders, or I'm not paying that, then what should we do for the state?
I'm not sure what you mean by Google.
Because they're delivering social media service for us. Like you share photo.
No. Okay, let's clarify. You're talking about House Bill 414.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about? That's Martinez. That's coming next. That's the social media bill. Is that correct? Yeah, I think you're on 414.
Yeah, I'm talking 414.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries, no worries.
I said there's one bill. Okay.
Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for this bill. I think child support is a very important part of the social fabric of our society, and I'm not a tax expert. That's why we have Delegate Buckle here in the committee to handle all that. But I guess my question is, so custodial parents have the benefit of the child tax credit, right?
Yes. As
part of helping raise a child. The non-custodial parent does not receive that benefit. So would this bill help create some equity between the two parties in receiving some type of tax benefit for supporting the child, at least co-supporting the child financially?
That's correct.
Awesome. Thank you.
Did you want to say something?
No, I just want to say that to Delegate Roberts' point, that would be, yes, that is the incentive structure that would really greatly assists with my clients, that this is a conversation that we consistently have with non-custodial parents and custodial parents, and we think that that level of equity is a good conversation to at least start having within the state of Maryland, so yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay. I have a question. How would, or who is determining that whoever is trying to make this deduction is actually paying the child support? So what if you have someone who is subject to a child support order, they are not paying it, but they still, on their taxes, want to say that, I am paying this, but they're really in arrears, $500, $5,000, $8,000 or more dollars. So who's doing the verification?
I would, first and foremost, if your payments are going through the Department of Human Services, it's already verified.
It's that they're not doing a good job.
Well, that is another conversation.
That's a whole nother issue. That's a whole nother issue.
Yes.
But I think there should be some thought given to make sure that people are not trying to claim a deduction. Is that the proper term, a deduction? It's not a credit, it's a deduction, right? That they're not paying, that they're actually not paying that child support. I just think that needs to be thought about.
I would completely agree. We want to make sure, this is to benefit those who are fulfilling their obligations.
Right.
And so where there needs to be clarifications, amendments, or more work to be done to tighten all of that up, we're happy to work on that.
And we would love an expanded conversation with DHS. We've had plenty of conversations before about how they calculated income and arrearages and things like that. So I think that's we would agree with your sentiments.
Okay, thank you. No more questions. Thank you, Delegate Young.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 149. Delegate Grammer, House Bill 355.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With your permission, I'll get started. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer here to present House Bill 355. House Bill 355 phases out the taxation of retirement income in Maryland over a period of 3 years. One topic we all hear about year after year is the cost of living in our state. We hear about it in our district, we hear about it in our committees, we even hear about it in the speeches of governors. Food, property taxes, water and energy costs, phone and cable bills, rent and the cost of housing. You can count on the cost of these inelastic expenditures to go up every year. For many people, something must be cut. Compare these costs to where they were 10 years ago, and you will find radical increases. This is extremely punitive to retired and elderly Marylanders who are 5 to 10 years away from any gainful employment or any cost of living increase. Maryland has and increasingly suffers from an abnormally high cost of living. The taxation of retirement income in our state makes these unrelenting cost of living punitive for retirees whose fixed incomes never meet their needs. It also incentivizes people to leave our state, and we continue to see a net loss of residents. Maryland has many aging communities, people who have lived in Maryland their entire lives, people who have worked and paid taxes in Maryland their entire lives and wish to age in place, close to families, friends, and familiar communities. People of every district who want to be able to retire near their children and grandchildren. When I became a member of the legislature in 2015, the size of the budget was over $39 billion. This year, it's over $65 billion. That is over a 62% increase in those years. Governor Moore has offered a budget of $65 billion this year, and the size of our budget has exploded. When do the most vulnerable people of our state, our retirees, when do they get relief? It's clear we can afford to stop taxing our retirees out of the state. In the face of skyrocketing inflation, which is putting those on fixed incomes underwater, we should eliminate the taxation of retirement income and keep Marylanders in Maryland. With that, I'd be happy to take questions, and I'd ask for favorable on House Bill 355.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 355. House Bill 357, Delegate Grammer.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer here to present House Bill 357. House Bill 357 applies the current sales and use tax exemption to all purchases of precious metals or bullion to that below $1,000. Currently, the sales of over $1,000 of bullion or precious metals receive a complete sales and use tax exemption. I can't see why we give a tax exemption to the wealthy, but not to the less affluent. Marylanders' small businesses are harmed by this policy of taxing precious metals purchases of under $1,000. Their sales of taxable and non-taxable items are leaving the state, along with Maryland state revenue. The harm is exacerbated when you consider that all of Maryland's neighbors, Pennsylvania, Delaware, West Virginia, and Virginia, have already stopped taxing all purchases of bullion and precious metals. The purchase of precious metals and bullion are a great way to preserve your wealth in inflationary times such as this, and House Bill 357 applies the sales and use tax exemption currently received by sales of over $1,000 to sales of less than $1,000, so that the less affluent can protect their wealth as well. With that, I'd be happy to take questions, and I'd ask for a favorable on House Bill 357.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you
Thanks so
very
much.
much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 357. House Bill 151, Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Good afternoon, colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Julie Plakovich-Carr, here to present House Bill 151. This is enabling legislation that would allow counties to cut taxes for low and middle income residents while raising additional funds needed to support public schools and local transportation systems. And the bill accomplishes this by raising the statutory cap on local income taxes. Colleagues, you've heard iterations of this bill before, but what has changed since last year is now nearly 2/3 of our counties are at the maximum allowable local income tax rate that's set in state law. So 17 of the 21 of us who serve on this committee actually represent a county that is at that statutory cap. So that means our local jurisdictions have, myself included, have very limited options for raising additional revenues because they've already maxed out on local income taxes. What this bill does is it gives an option for counties to have a higher income tax rate on the highest earners, those earning at least $250,000 for single filers or $300,000 for joint filers. And what would be a modest increase for the wealthiest 5% of Marylanders would collectively provide much needed funds to support public schools and for investing in transportation infrastructure. The bill would also make it financially feasible for more counties to give tax cuts to residents who are struggling. I want to stress that this bill won't have an impact on most small businesses, and that's because nearly all small businesses are set up as a pass-through entity, such as an LLC or partnership, as opposed to a corporation. And thanks to the previous work of this committee, pass-through entities can pay taxes as a business entity on behalf of their members, aka their owners. So this is instead of individual owners paying their business taxes on their individual tax returns. So under current law, a pass-through entity that pays taxes as an entity, not as individual owners, is not subject to the local income tax. So again, the bill won't impact most small businesses in our state. New in the legislation this year is that we set 8 specific income tax brackets, and that was to standardize the brackets across counties to make administration easier for the comptroller's office. Their office actually provided me with technical feedback this week, and we're figuring out the best path forward, and we'll be providing a sponsor amendment to the committee to address that issue, as well as the suggested amendment from Anne Arundel County. So in sum, this is enabling legislation that would help working families, make our tax system fairer, and make sure that our counties have the money they need to invest in essential public services, especially roads, transit, and public schools. And in addition to the jurisdictions that you're going to hear from today, I do want to note we have written testimony in support of the bill from the mayor of Baltimore City and the Frederick County Executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate, and thanks to the committee for hearing us once again on this bill. Bill, you've heard this in previous years. Anne Arundel County is one of the few counties left who is not at 3.2% for most of our taxpayers, but for our top earners, we did take them to 3.2 when you gave us that authority, and it's been successful. We are facing, as a county, we're not alone, we're facing a lot of uncertainty in our budget this year. We know that we're going to take somewhat of a hit from transfers of some obligations from the state, and we're looking at some of the proposals at the federal level that make all of our federal funding uncertain. $34 million for our operating agencies. 16 different agencies get federal funds, $166 million in federal funds to our capital budget, $100 million to our school system. We have 140,000 residents on Medicaid, and we have a lot of employees who are facing loss of income from their federal jobs or jobs that are supported with federal funds. So we look at this as a disaster recovery plan. We need to be prepared for what might be coming. And when you look at a disaster, you normally go to the federal government for support. We can't do that in this case. So we have to look at where the money exists, and it exists at the top end of our economic scale. So the top earners have done pretty well on cuts to federal income taxes over the years. They were cut in 1981, 1986, 2001, 2003, and 2017. They're at about half of what they were during the years when the U.S. economy grew its most and the middle class was created. During that time, $50 trillion moved from the bottom 90% of earners to the top 1%. So as we look at what we can do in our county to address the uncertainties that we face, there's no question in our minds that going to the folks who make the higher incomes is the way to go. So being able to go to 3.7% for our top earners gives us one of the few options that we have to be able to create revenue in this time. If we're not able to do that, we are not going to have a way to address the increasing poverty that our county is going to see. So it's the same bill that you've seen before. It's the same argument that you've seen before. It's supported by the Maryland Association of Counties because we all believe, whether we're going to use these tools or not, we all believe that we should have the authority to make these decisions with our taxpayers that pay our taxes. So, we're hoping for a favorable report on this, and we look forward to answering any questions as well.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here in support of the bill. You have my written testimony. I'd like to make a few points that maybe weren't made already. We see this as a bill that fits with MAKO's initiative to expand flexibility in raising local revenue to do things like pay for the blueprint, infrastructure, all the other things that counties are relied upon to do every single day. We also think this is a follow-up to the previous bill that was mentioned that authorized counties to provide more equity in the local income tax by using brackets, which is a hallmark of fair taxation at the state and the local level. But because 2/3 of Marylanders live in counties with the maximum 3.2% local income tax rate, those counties are not able to provide that flexibility, provide relief at the low end without losing needed revenue for schools, infrastructure, et cetera. So this bill would provide those counties in two-thirds of Maryland residents with the ability to have that kind of flexibility and the equity that comes with tax brackets. The other issue here, counties have two ways to raise revenue: income taxes at the local level and property taxes. Again, 2/3 of Marylanders live in the counties with 3.2%, the highest maximum local income tax rate. So in those counties, the only way to raise revenue for the blueprint, for all the other things that are becoming more expensive year after year, is to raise property tax rates. That will only exacerbate the housing crisis. So we're looking for flexibility to avoid doing that, but to still fulfill our commitment for the blueprint, for infrastructure, and for all the other things, again, that counties do every single day. I appreciate the comments from the bill sponsor about this bill not having a detrimental impact on small businesses. We certainly want to make sure that that does not happen, and we're very supportive of the upcoming amendments from the bill sponsor. So with that, we'd ask for a favorable report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Hello, good afternoon, members of the committee. Samantha Zwirling here on behalf of the Maryland State Education Association, representing 75,000 members across the state. We are here again in strong support for this legislation. Many of the points have already been made, but I'll also just add that, the governor's budget shifts about $92 million of pension costs onto local counties for educators' pensions. And we want to make sure that those are fully funded and that we're able to make sure that our pension system is strong. Counties need the ability to raise revenue to fund their commitments, to fund some of the cost shifts from the state to the local levels. And so this enabling legislation gives counties one more option for a solution that fits for their community. So with that, MSEA supports this bill and urges a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, questions? We'll start with Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill, and thanks for testifying. So I guess my question goes back to the point that was made a couple of times about this not impacting LLCs, S-corps, things of that nature. I guess my question, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's a proposal in the governor's budget that would tax LLCs at the gross rate. So if that initiative is passed in conjunction with this bill, wouldn't that then negatively impact small business?
I can't speak to that provision. I don't recall that in the governor's budget. I'll just say under current law, pass-through entities have the ability to pay at the entity level, and they pay the equivalent of the corporate tax rate as an entity when they pay their taxes that way.
Mr. Canale?
Are you referring to itemized deductions? Yeah, so I'm not sure. I mean, the bill is written to current law, so I'm sure we could have those conversations and see how this bill would interact with the budget. But I agree that as of current law, this bill would not affect those entities.
I guess the reason that's a concern for me is because the governor's budget is drafted as such, if any piece of it doesn't go, the whole thing kind of falls down, and that's a piece of the budget that, if that was passed in conjunction with this, it would have a net negative effect on small business. So that's one of my concerns, so thank you.
Delegate Buckle.
Madam Chair, I guess my fundamental question with all of these proposals to let people just raise taxes on everything. I mean, every day we hear a proposal to let the counties, localities raise more taxes. Is what about growth? And I guess that's the question. County Executive Pittman presides over, a county that is generally viewed in Maryland as a fairly above the median household income county, fairly well off. Do you have any idea, like, what's the GDP growth of Anne Arundel County over the last 5 years? I'm not doing that as a quiz question, sir. I'm not trying to, if you don't know exactly off the top of your head, that's fine. I don't have it in front of me either. I'm just wondering because I listened to Governor Moore and I really agree with him about something, which is what's holding Maryland back is that we don't grow. Virginia grows, Pennsylvania grows, North Carolina grows, and our growth has stayed the same. It's not Governor Moore's fault. It's been this way for a long time.
We're very lucky in Anne Arundel County that we have the economic drivers that we have, and our GDP has been better than the state of Maryland. Not as good as the country at 11% over the period that we've been looking at. But what this increase, if we went to 3.2 for our top earners, I don't believe it had a negative effect on growth. I think it actually helped. I think our businesses are telling us that workforce is their problem, and if they can get well-educated workers who have a place to live and who have transportation, they're good. They want to be here and they will grow. What is preventing them from growing is that when the workforce gets hurt, when the workforce can't live in the community because the services aren't there, that's where they're getting hurt the most. So by taking some of that benefit that the top earners are going to get from the continuation of the 2017 tax cuts, and Congress is talking about greater tax cuts for folks at the top, taking some of that money and investing it in their local school systems and their local transportation networks, I think is excellent for our economy.
So can I ask, does Anne Arundel County have a chamber of commerce? I assume they do.
We have many chambers of commerce,
right.
Yes.
You have sort of regional.
We have regional ones, yeah.
Have any of them, which generally represent your business owners, job creators, small businesses, some large, have any of them come out in support of this concept to potentially allow Anne Arundel County to increase local income taxes?
We have not asked for their support on this bill.
Okay. And that's all I ever ask is everybody comes to the table and says businesses really want this. Businesses want us. They want us to take more money and spend more money. And yet I never see, like, as W. Polakovich-Carr, my friend, knows, I'm not very technological, so I have my aide print everything off that comes on these bills, and I look through them really quickly, and I never once see a business that comes in and says, hey, we support this 100%, you raising our taxes. Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, the Bethesda Chamber of Commerce.
I'm a business owner. I support it.
Okay. I am too, and I would be against it. But the people who seem to represent these interests time after time after time don't seem to agree with the concept. And that's my question is, if we do things that defeat or deflate growth, are we just cutting off our nose to spite our face? Because it seems like, I'm reading, this is from NAOP, I'm not saying they're right, but they're citing the Department of Legislative Services. Despite the fact that we haven't raised any county income tax rates or raised these caps, the local income tax revenue has gone from $5.9 billion in 2021 to an estimated $7.3 or $7.4 billion last year. So we're getting billions of dollars of more money, we're just spending it. And so, do you have any sort of response to that from MACO's perspective? Sure. Do you guys think like, hey, we're defeating ourselves? We just keep raising taxes.
Sure. On the first question about businesses supporting infrastructure and schools, I think if you look at the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, one of their initiatives, if not their only initiative, is infrastructure investment. We are not seeing any money coming from the state to handle the kind of infrastructure investment the business community is looking for. It's not in the budget. It's not coming. So the only way we can deliver that kind of investment and that investment in infrastructure for businesses is to come up with solutions at the local level. Again, we're tired of waiting for the state. We can't do it. We have to be able to do these things locally to get that investment that, again, the Chamber of Commerce, an initiative for them is to invest in infrastructure. I'm not sure where they want the money to come from, but again, we don't see it coming from the state. I think on the second piece, yes, if you look at local income tax revenues, they have increased. But if you look at the mandates on counties, particularly the last few years with the blueprint, you'll see those have increased as well, right? So I think, you know, at the end of the day, and we're still not there, we're still not able to meet those commitments in some counties, even with that growth. So without more flexibility, we're just not going to be able to deliver on the blueprint. Right. And I don't think anyone here wants that to happen.
Well, see, so that's the question I would ask you. It seems like we're raising taxes, at least under the governor's proposal. We're raising taxes at the state level to pay for the blueprint. And now you're saying we have to raise taxes at the local level to pay for the blueprint. We're raising taxes at the state level to pay for quote unquote transportation. We all know that the vast majority, not the vast majority, but the majority of the money goes to mass transit, not to roads and bridges in this state. Now you're saying we got to raise more money at the local level to pay for transportation, which maybe yours is more roads. You don't directly run WMATA or MTA or those things. Maybe, would everyone agree, and I'm just wondering what MACO's position is. You represent a broad variety of jurisdictions with a broad variety of leadership structures. Maybe if we cut some of the spending, we wouldn't have to raise all the taxes, because it seems to be we have to raise taxes to pay for the blueprint and to pay for transportation. That's every day here. We never have a conversation about maybe we can cut some of these expenditures that we can't afford today.
I think that's a broad question. It's above my pay grade, but I will say if you look
Nothing is above your pay grade. You're a very smart young man.
If you look at MACO's testimony across committees when bills are introduced, I think you'll find that in many cases we're asking for relief. We're asking for unfunded mandates to be funded by the state in many of those proposals, and sometimes we're not successful. But broadly, I won't comment on spending at the state level. You all are very smart people, and you know, we're just trying to do the things you're asking us to do at the local level.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So a couple of things. One, the blueprint is paid for through FY28, so we're not talking about paying for the blueprint until after that. And I'm sure my friend, as he likes to say, friend to everybody, I know you are. If you take a look at the administration's budget proposal, there are cuts in that. So we're not just talking about tax increases. We are just going to take one moment and allow Mr. Madaleno to testify, and then we'll get back to questions. And if you've already asked a question, you can't have a second bite of the apple since he's just joining us currently.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee for allowing me to jump in. I am so sorry I was late. My name is Rich Madaleno. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the Montgomery County Government. I'm here representing County Executive Mark Elrich. If I may, you know, we all watched the news last night about the plane crash in the District of Columbia. When you saw the press conference this morning, the fire chief of DC, who did he thank? Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, Charles County, Baltimore City, for all responding. Why were we responding? Because we have these assets, because we have these responsibilities. These large counties, right? We have professional fire departments and rescue services, police departments that service our entire county. We as a county provide our own health and human resources services on behalf of the state. We operate our own library system. We have a very large and complex county government that needs revenues in order to function, to provide those services, including many of the legally responsible things we have to do thanks to all of you. We have to have water protection on the Potomac River because King Charles I gave the Potomac River entirely to Maryland. So we have to do every water rescue that happens in Potomac, even if the person stumbled into the river from Fairfax County on our side of the border, which is why Montgomery County and Prince George's County had those assets to respond to that plane crash. It is so important for us, and thank you, Delegate Plakovich-Carr, for introducing this once again and your work as our delegation chair, to have these sorts of tools because, quite frankly, you all as sovereigns, as a state, you have complete authority over your taxes. We only have the taxing authority you allow us to have. So we get all of these responsibilities, all of these services that people want, and we have to we have a limitation on our taxes. And Delegate Miller, you brought this up the other night. And we have a state constitutional provision that says our residents in Montgomery County with simply 1% of our population can petition a referendum to the ballot to restrict our taxing authority. So we keep getting more responsibilities. Some of them we want to give, we want to do. We're a liberal jurisdiction. We want to provide good services and a range of services, but we need the authority to fund those resources. And we want to do it, thanks to Delegate Palakovich-Carr, in a progressive way, in saying it should be income taxes. We want to follow the lead of Anne Arundel County and Frederick County and having a progressive structure to our taxes because we believe that's the fair thing to do. And we want that authority for our elected officials, again, this is enabling, to make that decision and then face the voters. And if the voters don't like it, they can throw everybody out of office and start with something different. But again, it's just about giving people the authority to deliver on the services they've promised and let the public decide if that's how they want to move forward, which is why County Executive Elrich and I ask respectfully but strongly urge you to pass this enabling legislation so that we can continue to provide services and tax people in the fairest way possible through a progressive income tax. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for being here, and thank you for bringing the bill. And of course, our deepest sympathies do go out to the victims of the plane and the helicopter crash. And a big thank you. We all, of course, thank our first responders for putting their lives on the line to rescue, to attempt to rescue. I completely understand the position that you are being put on. One of the things, yes, the blueprint may be funded up to a certain point, but what's not being shown is what is being pushed back to the locals. And a big piece of that was not properly accounted for is the pensions, because the pension numbers did not reflect the true cost of the blueprint. And so now that's why we have the $93 million that is being pushed back from the unfunded liability equation. So I understand that. But we're also now getting a lot of proposals to put a lot of tools in the toolbox for raising taxes on Maryland families who are also all struggling, right? As local jurisdictions are struggling, our Maryland families are also struggling. So is anyone keeping a track of, every time you say another flexibility, another tool in the toolbox, is there a growing list of all the tools that are being proposed in this session and how that would work, particularly as my colleague said, in relationship to the governor's budget?
So from MACO's perspective, I think you've heard two bills, both of which are progressive in nature and trying to be very targeted and not target Maryland families. And that's our approach. I know there are other proposals out there, but I think working with Delegate Palakovich-Carr on this bill and then the other bill that you heard the other day from the good Delegate Fair, both of those bills are targeted and they are designed in a way to not put more stress, more pressure on Maryland families. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to ease the burden there and spread it out for the people who can most afford to pay. So again, we're in a tough spot, like you said, but we're trying to do this in a way that does not impact the folks you're talking about.
Right, and yeah, obviously assessments have gone up 30% in our area. We're really hit hard with the growth in our area, especially. I did read the opposition testimony, and one of the things that I did like in relationship to that, which is why I brought it up, which is the NFIB, who is a voice for small businesses, right? So one of the things that they had supported legislation in 2020 before I got here, that there was to establish a commission to evaluate the state's tax systems and make recommendations to ensure Maryland's tax policy is competitive with surrounding jurisdictions and encourages business growth and job creation. And they would like us to consider revisiting that idea. Is that something that's going on currently? Is there any I just feel like we have the same conversation again and again about competing jurisdictions and where we are, and I feel like we have the same discussion when you guys come up. And this is only my third session, so is there anything like that going on?
I mean, I can speak to the legislative history there. Having been on the committee, there were multiple proposals put forward for a couple of sessions on that front. The committee never advanced any of those proposals. I think part of the reason why is we have a sense of what the issues are. And I'd say especially from the local revenue point of view, there really are only a few potential buckets of money that we can go to, and it's property and income taxes really are the ones where we have the most potential to actually raise anything that's meaningful for the local jurisdictions.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you for bringing the bill.
Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. County Executive and Delegate Palakovich-Carr for bringing this bill. There's been a lot said around this legislation, and I know that every single member of this committee is concerned about costs for all of our constituents, but I want to make sure that we don't stray too far from what is actually in this bill. I know it's an important one for Montgomery County, and I want to make clear, do any taxes increase with the passage of this bill?
No, it's simply enabling.
Okay, thank you. And is there baked in opportunities to make sure that the public is able to weigh in and make their voices heard around any potential increases if a jurisdiction decides to go in that direction?
Yes, I believe there's statutory requirements for local hearings to be held.
Okay, and do you anticipate that some jurisdictions will want this flexibility and others will choose not to utilize it?
Yes, I think you're exactly right, Madam Vice Chair.
So this sounds a little bit like local control and flexibility that we talk so much about. Would that be accurate?
I think that's a fair assessment, Madam Vice Chair.
So providing some additional tools and some flexibility for jurisdictions that choose to, with community input, to be able to have some flexibility when it comes to the income taxes and the tax rate. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that and bring us back to the bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Delegate Ebersol.
Same line of questioning, I think. Thank you all for being here. When we have initiatives that are important to us, then somebody has to do the heavy lifting sometimes and find ways to raise revenue. So what you're essentially asking us, am I correct, is can we have permission to do the hard work? Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Yes.
It is hard work, yes.
Dangerous work too, right? Thank you.
In this environment.
Any other questions? Delegate Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So with the enabling legislation, and I mean, I heard, I haven't looked at the legislation, so forgive me, but where the $250,000 mark, $250,000 mark, would that enable them to go as low? Could they go higher than the $250,000?
Yes, that would just be the baseline of where the higher tax rate could be imposed. That'd be the absolute lowest income level. But the county executive from Anne Arundel County can speak to his experience of what they've actually done because they chose.
Yeah, well, we created a threshold at 400 for family, for individuals, 480 for joint filers. And remember, that's taxable income. So your income might be 600, and then after deductions, it might be 450. And then this bill creates new categories. Some are above the 250 range. So we could choose at what level we thought that there should be a higher rate.
Okay.
Yeah, and the higher rate is only 0.5% from 3.2 to 3.7.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So I have a question about that 3.7%. How do you come up with that number?
Thank you, Delegate Wu, for the question. So that's been in the bill for a few years. The current cap is 3.2%. I'll say this is maybe where it's a little bit of an art rather than a science into writing legislation. We were trying to find something that would be reasonable yet meaningful for counties in terms of what it might potentially generate.
Is that like there are comparable numbers with other states or other?
It's not
places?
necessarily tied to another jurisdiction. Again, we were just looking at thinking a 0.5 percentage point in the cap right now would be a reasonable increase, but again, potentially be meaningful enough to a county. I think if we went something smaller than that, the usefulness of this as a tool for counties probably would be fairly limited.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, I do believe we have one virtual witness who is favorable with amendments. So I think we can dismiss this panel, and thank you so much for your time. Our virtual witness, if you can hear me, please turn your camera on so that you can come into frame for us. You can unmute and please proceed.
I assume you can hear me. Please excuse my voice, which you will be able to understand if you listen carefully. It's common when seeking additional funding to add provisions to ensure taxpayer money is spent efficiently. Along these lines, I proposed an amendment that would ensure that the Public Information Act works as intended when used to track public expenditures. To illustrate my larger point, I will focus on Blueprint, which is widely credited with driving the current push for tax increases. Employee compensation comprises more than 80% of the cost of most K-12 public school budgets. According to Maryland law, information about such compensation is nominally public information. Unfortunately, in practice, it is proved not to be. Consider the position of a school board member who wants to analyze his district's employee compensation. As I'm sure you know, this is highly sensitive information to request. Despite it being nominally public information, the school board member cannot access it without a majority vote of the school board, which makes it a high-profile issue that will raise eyebrows, as it is widely assumed that anyone who requests such information must be an enemy of public education. Thus, the politically prudent choice is not to ask for this information. Alternatively, the school board member could file a PIA request, but this request will also raise eyebrows and may lead to an unwanted lobbying campaign directed at him. A prudent school board member will less likely decide it's not worth the effort to seek this information, which is a bad outcome for taxpayers. As for the average citizen seeking this information via PIA request, many roadblocks may be thrown up that make pursuing such a request impractical. The only practical solution to fix this broken system is to proactively publish this information online and in a machine-readable format. I do not want to underestimate the political bravery it would require of you to make compensation information meaningfully public as opposed to just nominally public. But if you did, I think it would send a strong signal to taxpayers that you are serious about spending their money efficiently. Thank you for your time and patience with my voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 151. House Bill 183, Delegate Charkoudian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I bring up one witness? I think?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, colleagues, for the record, Delegate Lorig Charkoudian requesting a favorable report on House Bill 183. And let me just start by saying I appreciate the work that this committee is doing this year. We face a significant budget deficit. Revenues and ensuring sufficient revenues are an important piece of responding to that budget deficit. And I fully support all of the various progressive tax measures that you're considering. This bill is consistent with this broader conversation that I support, which is this idea that there are some people who are doing very well and some companies that are doing very well and that can afford to pay their fair share to receive all of the benefits of living in this state. And so I offer this bill to be considered in that context as you put together the pieces that let us have a progressive taxation policies that address our revenue issues and allow us to have a budget that's consistent with our values. I want to start by sort of pointing out that while the bill itself started in one very simple format, I like to have simple bills, but it seems that whenever I start, my bills become much more complicated. So I started with a very simple one, cross out one number and add another. As I had further conversations, it became clear that it couldn't be that simple. And so you have a series of amendments. They're reflective of the amendments that the comptroller's letter suggests. And so I'm going to be speaking about the bill in that sense as opposed to in its original sense. The basic idea behind this bill is that there are many people who have two homes, one home in Maryland and one home often in Florida or in other states where they're not taxed on their incomes. And so they live in Maryland, and I've had some people say directly to me, I stay in Maryland 5 months and 29 days so that I don't have to pay Maryland taxes, and then, have my primary residence in this other state where I don't have to pay income tax on the various passive income sources. And so this bill reflects the fact that obviously people want to be here often because Maryland is a great state. And Maryland's a great state in part because of the investments that we make in the state. And we make those investments with the revenue that we collect. And so the idea behind this bill is that folks who are choosing to live here for a large part of their time ought to pay their fair share for all of the good benefits they get from living in Maryland. So what this bill does is it essentially creates an apportionment. We do something similar with athletes. Athletes sort of live in different places depending on their professional, where they sort of what teams they're working on, where they're earning their revenues. The revenues might not be earned here, but they're here, playing on teams here. And so it's not a brand new concept, but the idea is that it apportions revenue that is and ensures that it's not revenue that's taxed in any other state. So we're avoiding the amendments avoid this idea that it would be taxed, the same income would be taxed by multiple states. And it ensures that for the period of Marylanders who are here between 3 and 6 months, there would be an apportionment of taxes on their income that would reflect that period of time. So still, if they were only here 2 months, for example, or 2.5 months, they still would be sort of in the same situation they're in now, where we wouldn't be taxing their revenue, their income. But this adds sort of that in between. And I'll just say, we've obviously we'll hear from folks about the retirees, I think, is sort of the feedback that I've heard most about. And I just want to say, I think that there's a difference between taxing and taxes and being thoughtful about folks who are on a fixed income, living in the state of Maryland in one home, and the idea of someone who has the good fortune of being able to have 2 homes and live in 2 different places, and asking those folks to pay their fair share for the benefits they get when they're in Maryland. I'll stop there, and I look forward to continuing the discussion with any questions that folks have.
Hi, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Callie Shumitz. I'm Vice President for External Relations with the Maryland Center on Economic Policy, here in support of House Bill 183. So as part of my work over the last few months, I've been talking to lots of folks in different community groups around the state about our tax system, about what's going on with the state budget as part of our public education work. And one thing that has kept folks in several different areas have raised to me is sharing that, hey, my neighbor, my acquaintance, someone I know in my community is has 2 homes, is claiming residency in another state for tax purposes, and is sending their children to public schools. Whether that is legal under current law, I don't know. I can't speak to that, and it's hard to have data on how common this is, but it's an anecdote that has come up several times to me over the last few months. And so when Delegate Charkoudian brought this bill to us, it's something that we were interested in supporting. We think it's a way to ensure that close this loophole and make sure that people are contributing to the services that they are benefiting from in Maryland, particularly, the public schools is a huge part of the state budget, and ensuring that they are contributing if they are using our public schools, our roads, our transportation services. There's a lot of things that our state taxes pay for, and I think with the apportionment amendments, which we strongly support and we think are important, is a way to ensure that people are contributing to the services that they're benefiting from. So that's why we're here in support, and we'd ask for a favorable report.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for bringing this bill. I guess my first question is, do any other states have this 3-month residency requirement?
So just to be clear, we're not, we're changing, I'm proposing moving away from this idea that you're a resident if you're here 3 months, and mirroring what we do with professional athletes, where it's more of the apportionment thing. And there are several other states that do that with professional athletes or other sort of specific groups. To my knowledge, no one has exactly what it is that I put together with the Comptroller's Office for amendments. But the concept of apportionment of certain income, we wouldn't be the only state doing that. We aren't right now, and there's others who do it.
But for non-athletes, regular citizens, are you concerned of any type of reciprocities? Maybe Florida says, well, now you only need to be a resident for, so many less months. And to counteract this, to encourage people just to say, I'm just going to move to Florida and not have to worry about trying to accommodate this. Because the people, frankly, that have dual residencies that you're targeting in this are the ones who actually can afford to say, okay, I'm out, I'm just going to go to Florida or Delaware.
So I think, so 2 things. So because it's no longer about changing residency, the issue of like reciprocity, what if everyone makes it 3 months, does that screw up our tax system? That absolutely would. And so that's why it's the apportionment. And so if other states did this, it would still be consistent. Like it would work for multiple states to do this. So that wouldn't be a problem. Your second question about like, what if folks could just leave? I think it's a valid question. I think there is a question about what are the costs to the state. When we talk about, we want economic growth or we need an increase in residency in order to have a robust budget, those economic growth and residency, that assumes that the people who are here are paying their fair share. So if we have people who are here physically in the state, but not paying their fair share, we're not achieving the goals of what we say population or economic growth would achieve. Because if they're not paying their fair share, I'm sure they're perfectly lovely people and, we might miss them personally, but from a broader public policy perspective, folks deciding not to stay from an economic justice perspective or from a budget balancing perspective, I don't think that harms the state.
Well, I guess it begs the question because these individuals are paying their fair share in other states, which is much, much less than their fair share, quote unquote, here in Maryland, which is why these individuals, I think, would flee because they're already established and set up in another state. And they can just flip a switch and like, okay, I would rather go pay my fair share in a state that that's better for my family. I want to be in Maryland, but I can't afford it anymore. So I'm going to go and just spend all my money in another state. That's my biggest concern.
Yeah, and I think there's a real question about, do we want to have a wealth shift for middle and lower income people who can't afford 2 homes, paying their fair share of taxes, to subsidize a wealthy person who isn't paying their fair share, who has 2 homes and has the ability to spend more time in one of them so they're not paying their fair share, but is still benefiting from the services in the state of Maryland. And I think, I mean, you might have a different sort of answer to that question, but my answer would be that people who can pay their fair share ought to, and people who can afford 2 homes, if their preference is not to be here because we're asking them to pay their fair share, that may be a consequence that we have to accept in order to have a budget that reflects our values and to not have a wealth transfer from lower income folks to those folks.
I'm just concerned again that, while we want people to pay their fair share, and it's a very valid point, a nice thing we're trying to solve, you don't want people having dual residencies and all that, or paying their fair share here. I think this bill would solve that issue. I think it would export all those individuals you're concerned about and then leave everyone receiving services paying their fair share. So I appreciate the bill. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate you bringing the bill. What is your, and I'm trying to read this, again, my legal knowledge, what is the legal difference between a domicile and maintaining a place of abode?
Honestly, I don't know, but I don't think that changes what the bill does. But if you think it does, we can see if we can get some legal.
Okay, because so my understanding, and again, I'm not a lawyer, my understanding and how the bill is written, that there's one that references domicile, and then there's a part that references place of abode, and you guys keep referencing owns 2 houses, owns 2 houses, owns 2 houses, fair share, everything. But in my opinion, the way the bill is written, that a place of abode is a residence. When I looked it up, it's a building, a structure in which a person maintains whether they own it or not. And if you're talking about someone who's here 91 days and changing this to whether it's 3 months or 91 days or whatever it's going to be of the taxable year, would that include students who are here for internships? Would that, and I have a whole list, so I mean, would it include traveling nurses who are here for a limited time? And whether they're traveling and when they're a month here and they're a month here, but they have a place of abode for 91 days in Maryland, would it, and we have a nursing shortage, would it include teachers that come or people that come here that are in care facilities or in rehab for some kind of physical ailment or addiction or a mental health need that have come to this state because that's where we provide care and they're here for 91 days? Would it be impact, a lot of times relatives come to care for their ailing mom, dad, sibling for an extended period of time, and they might be here for 91 days, and are they now gonna be hit with a tax bill? And for businesses, we hire a lot of temporary businesses and workers, particularly where I am and in the biotech and biomed field, we have a lot of temporary workers that come and that are filling strategic gaps. And that if they're here for over 91 days, and then we have a lot of colleges in my district that come on a learning visa that are gonna be here for over, or if they're studying abroad. So it's a whole bigger thing to me in how it's written than just wealthy people that own 2 houses. And I think there could be a lot of unintended consequences or impact for people who really make a difference in our state.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I appreciate.
I know that might not be your intention, but that's how I see it. So is that your intention, or are there some?
Well, let me tell you what the bill says. Thank you for the additional comments about, because I wasn't tracking what you were saying about abode. But what this tax is taxable interest income, capital gains from intangibles, dividend income, taxable alimony, royalties. And so what that means is already, so that means that if there's a nurse who's spending some of their time here and some of their time in Florida, if that nurse is earning income in the state of Maryland, they're already paying income tax on that. If that nurse also is receiving significant capital gains from intangibles and has the 2 abodes, then the additional time that they spend here, their capital gains income from capital gains would be taxed in that way. And so for the most part, the things that are here reflect passive income that tend to be income sources for wealthier individuals, and don't tend to be the student who has an internship. So if the student who has an internship is receiving capital gains from intangibles, I would say that it's fair game for us to tax the portion while they're here. But I think the vast majority of folks that you listed who are not intended to be paying more under this bill, you're talking about working people, and those individuals are already paying taxes on the income they're earning here. They wouldn't be paying taxes on income they're earning elsewhere. So it would only be on these passive income sources that tend to be income sources for people who are wealthier. And so I think that it's not that none of those people could be affected by this, but I think the vast majority are not affected by this.
Well, that's like an assumption, because especially if I live in Florida and my mom is still here in Maryland and I'm coming here and staying with her, then all of those things would be taxed now in Maryland because I'm staying here, coming and taking care of her?
Yeah, well, so yes, if
so I would qualify under that.
If you have significant income from interest income, capital gains, dividend income, taxable alimony, and royalties,
so even though
again,
I'm not
which
working, I'm just staying here with her. I'm not working here, I'm just staying here with her. I would be, at 91 days, I would have to start paying Maryland tax on all that. I just want to make sure I'm clear if that scenario would happen.
If you have income from these sources, which tend to be sources that wealthier individuals are receiving income from, then yes.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Chirkity, I'm going to give you a hypothetical because you used the phrase fair share a lot. And so I guess my question is this. Let's assume that a husband and wife couple, let's just say they're 65, wife and wife, whatever, they're a married couple. They're 65, they retired from the state, working here in the state of Maryland. They purchased property in, let's just say, South Carolina. But they keep their home in Howard County. Or perhaps they have a little cabin, a summer home, a condo in Ocean City or in Garrett County, Deep Creek Lake. And they have some family members here. They don't have any kids. They don't have a single kid being educated in the K-12 system of the state of Maryland. They don't ride the metro ever because they're in Howard County or Worcester County or Garrett County. They don't use the metro. They don't use a bus. They don't use any of our mass transit facilities whatsoever. But because they have some family connection here, they buy this house and they live in South Carolina, under my hypothetical, for the vast majority of the year, for nine months roughly, 8 months and 3 weeks. Because the weather's nicer there and they like it better there and they can do whatever it is they want to do there. Maybe they don't pay as much taxes. South Carolina seems to be growing at a much more rapid clip than Maryland. And they stay in their old house in Howard County for a couple of months or their new condo in Ocean City. They pay the property taxes on all of that. They stay there, they stay at that condo, and they don't really use almost any governmental services of the state of Maryland, none. Don't have kids in the schools, don't use your mass transit, don't call the police, probably don't go to the hospital here unless they have some kind of an incident while they're out on a boat or something. What's their fair share? What do they owe the state of Maryland in taxes to pay for all of our governmental services?
I think we don't have a society where we're able to pick and choose who gets access, right? We don't have a society where we can tell them, it seems like you're not paying your fair share, so don't call the police if you get mugged. We don't have a society where we can say, it doesn't seem like you're paying your fair share, or you've said you're not really that interested in participating in Maryland's public services, so if your house catches on fire, don't call the fire department. Or if your road, they're driving on roads that they don't want to have flooded, there's investments that Maryland is making, especially if they're going to Ocean City. There's roads that are in danger of being flooded, and Maryland is making investments every day so that those roads aren't flooded and so that they can get to and from that home. We're not going to bar them from entering the public library or going on to DNR property to enjoy our public parks. It doesn't work that way. If you're you're in Maryland, you benefit from Maryland, what Maryland pays through the budget. And frankly, that's why people want a connection and want to stay in Maryland. And so if you're in Maryland, then you pay your fair share and you have access to all of that, and you can choose to access it or not, but we don't have a mechanism where we're punching tickets when people call the police or call the fire department or drive on a road that's not flooded.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Your proposition for the bill in your original statement was people do this all the time now. They stay here for 5 months and X number of days, so they get very close to the 6-month barrier, and then they make sure that they're 6 months in a day in another state, and they do so that they pay less taxes. Is that the theory of this? Do you think those people are stupid? Because if what they're doing is they have the ability to go back and forth in that mannerism, they don't have to be here 12 months out of the year, or 9 or 10 or 11. Do you think that when your bill passes and someone, their accountant, tells them, well, now, Joe, now, Sally, if you stay there, not you, Delegate Vogel, I'm sure you'd be loved to pay your fair share. But if they tell Joe, if they tell Sally, well, guess what? You used to be able to stay in Maryland for 5 months and 25 days, and now you can only stay for 2 months and 29 days, or you're going to get hit with this tax bill that's a lot higher in the state that you're at least at 50% of the time, in your scenario, 66% of the time, 75% of the time. Do you think they're stupid and they're just going to say, well, I'll just go ahead and stay for that extra couple weeks, extra month. I'll stay the way I used to stay, hit me with a few $1,000s more in taxes? Or do you think that they'll just modify their behavior and say, well, Maryland's going to tax me if I stay there, so I won't do it anymore? Because I don't think people who have these kind of income are stupid.
So maybe we should change it so it's like 1 month or more?
No, maybe we should just
30
leave it the
days or
way
more?
the other 49 states in America leave it, and realize that taxation systems are not perfect, and you cannot simply tax and tax and tax and tax and tax every which way, because people, we're not a country. You know, it'd be one thing if you said that we're the United States and we're going to have our tax rate. Nobody's going to move to Guatemala because they don't like the United States tax rate, or very few people are, even very wealthy people, because the United States is a very unique country with unique attributes. But I have to break it to all my friends in this room. I love the state of Maryland as much as the rest of you do, but Maryland is not a unique snowflake. We do not have the hallmark on every government service. We are not the only place you can live in the United States of America. And people are free to move, and they move and have the exact same lives and the exact same services and the exact same schools and the exact same roads all over the other 49 other states for a large part. And so do you think that our tax policies, by doing this, decrease our competitiveness and decrease people's willingness to want to live here?
So I think that no tax system is perfect, right? There's advantages and disadvantages. So we go in understanding that no policy is perfect, and there's advantages and disadvantages. And I think that I don't think that this changes a competitiveness factor. I don't think, again, that the people who are potentially now staying here less, perhaps our roads get less wear and tear. You know, perhaps there's less pressure on the systems that the rest of us are paying for. That could be an impact of it. It absolutely could have that effect, but it also, you know, to the extent that people are, you know, and again, it's anecdotal, but we've all heard it a lot about the schools. You're definitely less likely to be using the school system if you're here just 3 months of the year. So. Yeah, I think that potentially it could have that effect, but I don't think there's a revenue loss from that's commensurate with the revenue loss that we're sort of what we're missing out on here.
Thank you.
Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just looking for clarification, if I understood you correctly, you would, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't feel that a person that owns a house and stays here less than 6 months is really any value to the state. And that person who is staying in that house less than 6 months isn't benefiting from a homestead tax credit, so they're paying their full share of property tax, which would support their police and fire. They're, you know, most likely don't have children in their schools, which is one of our biggest expense. Paying for services because they're probably an older, more affluent person or couple or whatever, because they have the ability to have those houses. So they're paying for services, supporting our businesses such as the lawn service, the plumber to come and unwinterize the house or whatever. Supporting our grocery stores, having money to support our restaurants and all these businesses and how the economy works. So to clarify, you said you don't see a value in that person.
Well, let me just clarify. I see a value in every single person, regardless of what their wealth is or how much they're financially contributing to the state. Like people, I see a value in. But on balance, we have a tax structure that says this is what we believe is a fair amount to expect people who receive significant income from capital gains, from interest, dividends, and these items here. And on top of that, their property taxes and the other forms of taxes. And this is what we give back in return. This is the public compact. And so I do think that if the decision is to spend less time here in an attempt to not be part of this public compact, I recognize that that could be the decision that gets made, and I accept that that might be the appropriate outcome when we say, here's the public compact, and we want you to pay your fair share.
Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Charkoudian, for bringing this bill forward. Actually really appreciated, Ms. Schmitz, that you mentioned about the stories that you hear, because I actually have heard these stories too in my county, including of people whose kids are enrolled in public school while the other parent is maintaining residency in another state and coming back on the weekend. So like we see the public cost to that. Delegate Charkoudian, I just wanted to ask the question about the amendment that you offered to the committee. So the Comptroller's Office has informational testimony, and do you believe the amendment that you've brought forward at this point addresses their concerns in terms of the reciprocity with other states?
It should be word for word their proposed amendment, because I worked it out with them. If there's a drafting mistake, we can fix that.
Not trying to flag that, just make sure
it should be
they're
word
good
for
now.
word their suggestion, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 183, House Bill 35. Delegate Frazier Hildago.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Vice Chair, may I bring up my panel?
Absolutely.
Come on down. All right. Thank you very much, Ways and Means Committee, for allowing us the opportunity to present House Bill 35 to you. I think that after the last few bills, I hope, will find this bill very, very refreshing. I think it's pretty obvious that we have a little bit of a budget shortfall problem. It's just $3 billion. So with that said, a lot of what gets proposed is we make cuts and we raise taxes. But one of the things that I know that Governor Moore is really pushing hard on, as am I, and it was said earlier today, is the idea of the best way to deal with this problem is to grow our way out of this problem. We need to figure out how to grow jobs in Maryland. We need to figure out how to grow jobs that are good tech jobs that create intellectual property in the state. And so what this bill does, it does exactly that. What this bill does, I'm going to actually read it for you verbatim. The net operating loss subtraction modification will allow eligible technology companies to transfer unused operating loss credits. The research and development tax credits will enable eligible companies to transfer unused R&D credits to other Maryland businesses. So in essence, what it does is it allows a company that's in a startup phase that has tax credits that can't use those tax credits at the moment because they don't have the profits to use them. It allows them to trade with other companies that are further down the line, let's say a few years down the line, that do have the ability to use those tax credits, but they're not available to them then. And this helps young startups to get through what you'll hear is called the valley of death. And that is when a startup is getting money, when startups come out of the University of Maryland system, as you are well aware, many do. You'll hear from one of those companies today. And they start moving along. They start getting some money. They have some VCs. They raise some money. And as they're moving forward, they realize they need more money. And there's these great tax credits available, but they're just not there yet. They need those tax credits in a couple of years when they're eligible, not at that moment. So with this said, what this bill does is allows for the trading of those tax credits for companies a little bit further down the line that are a little bit more mature, helping to get those startups to a position where they can start making money, they can start hiring people sooner and become more profitable sooner and turn out jobs in the state of Maryland faster, which is what we need. You'll hear from one of these companies here today that is spun out of the University of Maryland. There have been many spun out of the University of Maryland. And Senator Feldman just had the bill hearing a couple of weeks ago over in Budget and Tax. And I'm going to pass it on. And then I'm happy to answer questions if that's okay with you after the whole panel, Madam Chair. Is that the way you'd like to do it?
Yes, but
Okay.
I know you have to be somewhere too, so if you
I'll
have to
worry
run
about
out,
that later,
that's
but
fine.
thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you.
Sure. Madam Chair, Committee, my name is Ben Margolis. I'm the Director of the Maryland Energy Innovation Accelerator, which is a program of the Maryland Clean Energy Center. We work with early stage startups to help them get their technologies out of labs and garages and into the market. I'm here today in favor of HB 35. Legislation I think could be very impactful for the the innovation economy broadly throughout the state. The Maryland Energy Innovation Accelerator has worked with over 50 startups in the past 5 years, has led to over $50 million coming into the state from public and private investment. In addition, we also manage the Climate Technology Founders Fund, a $1 million fund to invest directly into those startups, which has a matching requirement, forcing us to work with the investment community and directly reach out to investors outside and inside the state. What I hear most often from those startups is the need for access to capital being the biggest issue, and I believe this legislation tackles that issue head on. And I think the mechanism is smart and effective. When I talk to my startups about this legislation, they all say they're all very supportive and are encouraging of it. So I think the legislation can be very impactful, both for retaining startups as well as potentially attracting new ones and attracting investment into the state. So with that, I would encourage you to issue a favorable report and open to any questions.
Good afternoon, committee. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Jorge Diaz-Schneider. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Ion Storage Systems. We are an innovative next-generation lithium battery company that operates right here in Maryland. We are a spun-off from the great innovation that comes out of the University of Maryland. And I'm here to strongly support and encourage you to vote favorably for House Bill 35. We are 75 strong and growing. I myself took over the position of CEO just 3.5 months ago, and I'm coming back to Maryland precisely because the type of innovation that Ion Storage is doing is beyond what other companies in Silicon Valley are doing, and it represents really the type of jobs, not just in quantity but quality, that this type of innovation draws to our state. This type of legislation provides critical cash at just the right time when companies need that non-dilutive infusion of resources to accelerate commercialization of these types of batteries that are going to make our EVs and really across applications in military and consumer electronics unlock tremendous value by doubling energy density and really providing a level of safety that is currently science fiction for lithium batteries out in the market. We firmly believe and strongly believe that creating these ecosystems where we're able to retain intellectual capital and really providing favorable business environment is the right way to make these innovations as efficient as possible and provide an edge for those of us that are tackling the hard science and the hard commercialization. And for that, I couldn't be prouder to come back to Maryland and to continue to be supportive of this type of legislation to keep our best and brightest in this state and help us with the most favorable of economic conditions to provide that growth that Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo was referencing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to address you in favor of House Bill 35. My name is Paula Burtis. I'm the Associate Director of the Maryland Energy Innovation Institute and also a faculty member at the University of Maryland. Clean energy innovation can help Maryland achieve its climate goals and also help grow its economy. Since the Maryland Energy Innovation Institute was created in 2017, it's helped to create 58 new energy companies in Maryland, which has led to the creation of 225 jobs and helped bring in over $79 million in private investment and over $111 million in grant funding. No matter what your beliefs are about climate change, it's been a great business opportunity to be involved in energy innovation in the past 10 years, and will continue to be a great business opportunity going forward. So the investments that have been made into the Maryland Energy Innovation Institute, compared to how the money invested, is 33 times less than the total amount of money that's been brought in from additional investments based on that investment into MEII. And the companies are now pursuing private investment to help expand and grow their companies in Maryland, but given their early stage, they don't have the taxable revenue that they can use to take benefit from the Maryland tax code. So the idea here is to help transfer their tax deduction to other companies. That gives another incentive to help raise additional private capital and accelerate their growth, which will add more jobs to the state and also help more employee revenue taxes into the state. So with that, I'd like to say the Maryland Energy Innovation Institute urges a favorable report for House Bill 35 and also thanks Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo for leadership in sponsoring this legislation. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Vogel.
I think this bill, thank you, Madam Chair. I think this bill is so cool, Delegate, and I spoke to your senator about this, I remember a few months ago. So just, I want to clarify on the net operating losses deduction specifically. So the idea here is that as a startup, you can essentially sell that credit or that deduction for cash, right? To help you build out your business, because if I understand correctly, if you're a startup, you have more losses, right? So you're able, that's just the reality of it, that you're able to capitalize on that.
That's correct, and to that end, there is a clawback period, so these companies have to stay in Maryland. They can't just take the money and run, they have to stay here for at least 5 years.
Great, so it's kind of a win-win. It's a win for these startups, it's a win for the larger, more established companies. And can someone mention the valley of death? I think it's a really fascinating concept here, an unfortunate concept. Can someone just dive into that?
Jorge, you'd probably be good. Yes. I had a conversation with Jorge a couple of hours ago in my office, and he explained it. I kind of knew beforehand, or I wouldn't have put the bill in, but he did an excellent job of explaining it.
Thank you, Doug, I appreciate it. My pleasure. As you near commercialization of next generation technology, there is a period of qualification time. Particularly if you're going into military applications, for example, where you want to make sure that that technology is tested beyond any doubt before you put it in, say, a battery pack that's going to go out in the field. What that creates is that creates a space where, as a company, you need to continue to operate, you need to continue to support those programs, but you're not generating any revenue. Yeah. And so that's one example of many where companies that are operating in startup mode, as they're getting to the end of that funding round, they are basically starved for cash. The alternative requires either having a next financing round, which comes at the expense of dilution and equity, and it is an expensive process. And with this bill, what we see is a very elegant way of basically having non-dilutive cash come in right at the time when the company is at the most. So think of it as that last glucose package in the marathon, right? When you're really getting to the end and you get that extra boost of energy to get you over the finish line.
I can run up to about 4 miles. I don't know about a marathon, but what I find so fascinating here is that this really could help us help so many of these companies that are struggling with that valley of death, and this infusion of cash, right, could help generate significantly more successful companies down the line. And it's really not costing the state money that it hasn't already appropriated or allocated for this purpose, right?
That is correct. And maybe to take it a step further, if I may, it allows us to not consider moves like, okay, we're going to have a reduction in labor force while we have these programs. In fact, it provides the exact opposite. It provides us to create more, better jobs because we are provided that extra runway to get to that revenue generating phase and then be in a position where we contribute out of our now gains, not losses from our business operations.
Great, thank you.
It's a force multiplier, if you will. Because it happens faster, because they get the money faster, they can hire more, they can hire faster. And that's more people, right?
Great, Bill. Thank you.
Delegate Buckle.
I wanted the gentleman from ION at the end, you're kind of getting all the questions. What specifically, I think battery technology is something as we talk about energy, clean energy, wherever you're getting it from, batteries seem to be a key element of it. What exactly do you do and where do you see your company's profile, job creation, those kind of things occurring here in Maryland that would benefit from this?
Yep. Terrific question. The batteries that we are currently used to, which created so many consumer segments and really applications that drive our world today, anything from our phones to our EVs, are not safe enough and let's just say not good enough by our standards. The technology that ION is currently developing is a solid-state battery that does not use any harsh chemicals and is not based on any type of foreign raw material supply, because a lot of these batteries, particularly the ones that use lithium metal anodes, they resort to places like China to procure those materials. Our technology is a ceramic, so think of it as a very thin, ultra-thin piece of ceramic, like your dishware. Of course, my CTO would kill me if I was making these kinds of analogies. But at the end of the day, what that allows you to do is you create a technology that can operate with any cathode, so with any type of, you hear a lot about LFP right now, driving costs down for EVs, high energy cathodes. Our technology is agnostic to any of that, so it's a very flexible alternative to convert an existing lithium battery platform into a solid-state battery. Now, what that creates is a battery that is not flammable. Yeah, you see a lot of stories. If you talk to any firefighters today, for example, if there is an EV crash, the standard operating procedure is you have to let the vehicle be consumed by flames, because these batteries are not safe by virtue of the electrolyte that they use. Our technology opens the door for batteries that are decisively safer and that are not just safer, but that create 2 times the amount of energy density to really open up the space to not just redesign things like EVs, but also create new spaces like, you hear a lot about the Internet of Things, you hear a lot about smart glasses, those things require very small but very powerful uses of batteries. That is the type of technology that we are developing, as well as those applications that are going into defense. So if you think of somebody that is out in the field, these are the harshest of conditions where there can be no question on performance. And we have to make sure that those batteries are safe, because they're quite literally attached to somebody's back that is out in the field. And so that is really the value of the technology that we are cultivating. And again, why we feel so strongly that policies like these can help these technologies get to market faster in a more effective way.
That's great. That sounds like that would be fantastic to have Maryland be a national, international leader in that. So thank you for the explanation. I'm not a big tech guy, and that sort of helps me get the picture of what you're doing. I appreciate it.
And Delegate, to bottom line this for you, the batteries that they're working are twice the energy density at the same volume. So think about your phone going for 4 or 5 days instead of 1 day. Think about the watch, your Apple Watch or whatever you're wearing, needing to be charged every 4 or 5 days for the same size. And you don't have that degradation. They're not doing 800 cycles and then the battery starts to lose its energy like with your phones. They will go north of 1,000 or more cycles. They just keep going. And so,
interesting. Thank you.
Cool stuff.
Delegate Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, actually, I think my question was kind of answered, but I want to just really commend you for this bill. This is very creative, and we really need to be more creative given the state that we are in on this. Because my question really was going to be how this will be implemented, but I'm just sitting up here reading the fiscal note and everything. I do notice that the fiscal note says that it could increase revenues by $600,000. I'm curious as to how that works, like where that calculation.
A couple things. One thing is that this is modeled after a bill that was voted into law and has been working very, very well in New Jersey 25 years ago. So they have created thousands of jobs out of this from New Jersey. That's how it started. I'm like, how's New Jersey doing this? So there's an existing program. So it's a little bit hard for the fiscal note to be completely transferred over because in some cases those incentives aren't being taken advantage of because of that. They're in that valley of death, so there's no profits at that moment. So this would just swap that over. So it doesn't change how much money's available, but the reason it's a little bit hard to understand or to get a really strong bogey on the fiscal note is because they don't exactly know like who's going to apply and when they're going to apply for it. And in the past, they always haven't applied because the companies died in that valley of death. And so they weren't able to take advantage of it. Even though they qualified time-wise, they did not qualify profit-wise, if that helps them.
Yeah, it does. And then my other question is going back to the whole battery issue, because I do have an electric vehicle. So you said that my car is going to have to burn if I
Separate subject matter, Delegate.
So it is an unfortunate consequence of the type of electrolyte that is in the batteries right now. The chemistry of the battery does not allow it to be put out by the current procedures that we have for internal combustion engines. Lithium is essentially reactive to water. That is why it is, of course, there are chemicals that are applied in the field, but at the end of the day, it speaks to the need to continue to evolve the technology and make it safer for everyone.
Sure, thank you.
They originally had a DOD contract, right?
That is correct. So one of the key adopters of the technology that has voiced very early interest is the Department of Defense, particularly for something called wearable conformal batteries. So these are batteries that are worn as part of the equipment out in the field to power the different devices that are used in campaigns. And so that is one of the markets that we're seeing as early adopters for the technology.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Delegate, thank you for bringing forward the bill. It's kind of very interesting idea, and hopefully it will help the startup. I just feel it's similar to the carbon credit exchange. Is that similar to that?
I'm sorry, similar to what?
Like carbon emission, they have a credit for that exchange?
No, you know what it's most similar to would be the biotech tax credit that we implemented years ago. It's very similar to that biotech tax credit, which has helped to spur, as you know, the biotech industry in the I-270 kind of corridor.
I see. So one question is, there's a possibility, like they have a credit, they probably sell at a discount. If they don't, like other side to buy it, say, if you don't sell at a discount, I'm not purchase that. Is that possible, or how do we?
It is, but the bill is rated at 80%, so it has to be at 80%.
That's the lower bound.
Right.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee.
That concludes the hearing
try not to
on
bug
House
you
Bill
anymore.
35. House Bill 414, Delegate Martinez.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and colleagues on the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Ashanti Martinez, here to present House Bill 414, the Health and Taxation, Digital Social Media Services, and the Mental Health Care Fund for Children and Youth. This bill would establish a health fund that would be powered or funded by our social media companies. The focus of this bill is to enhance mental health access for children and youth throughout the state of Maryland. We know through research that over the past decade, social media companies have had a really negative effect on our kids. According to Yale Medicine, a study of American teens aged 12 to 15 found that those who use social media for more than 3 hours a day were twice as likely to experience mental health issues, such as depression and anxiety. Other studies have also highlighted greater risk for adolescent girls and those struggling with poor mental health to begin with, having social media compound those issues. These studies point to specific negative outcomes related to cyberbullying, body image issues, disorders and behaviors around eating, and poor sleep quality. According to the American Psychological Association, adolescence is a time with increased susceptibility to peer pressure, as well as sensitivities to social rejection. Exposure to harmful content on these platforms, such as cyberbullying, depictions of illegal and illicit behavior, encouragement of self-harm, have been linked to greater mental health challenges for both the victims and the witnesses of such content. As we've seen a rise in the use of social media amongst all of us, it has become more evident that we must do more to fight to protect our youth from the harm associated with these technologies that are so pervasive. While social media has also provided an outlet for our youth to express themselves and connect locally and globally, we must also be very cognizant of the harm that these tools cause. The next generation of Marylanders deserves us to be very focused on protecting them. I want to thank the Comptroller's Office for working with me. You probably noticed in your packet they did not send a letter, but they're very much involved with this bill. We're working on some amendments around the implementation date to help them gear up. You all are aware they're getting a lot of technological and staff improvements. I think that would help with implementing this. So we're working on an amendment to change the enactment date to 2027, just because the 2025 date in the bill is not necessarily feasible. What you also will see is that we have a ton of support from organizations such as the Baltimore Behavioral Health Center, EveryMind, Maryland Association of School Health Nurses, the Maryland Psychiatric Society, and Disability Rights Maryland. And in the packet, you'll see from every tech company possible that I think could send a letter by the deadline are not in support, right? The people who aren't supporting this are the ones who we ultimately know are causing harm, and we want them to open their purse. And so I look forward to your questions and your support for House Bill 414.
Okay, questions? Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate, to bring forward this bill. And I have a few questions. First one, I look at the social media platform. I'm thinking about Google should probably count it based on your definition, right? So my question is, what happens if they said the tax too high, they pull out their service from Maryland?
That's a great question. You know, I think, one, the amount of money these folks make will be an incentive for them not to pull out their services. This tax would be fairly unique in the sense that no other state would have it. I don't think the tax will hurt their bottom line to the point where they would want to remove all their services from all people across the state. If that was to happen, we would have, of course, a different conversation. But the idea that we impose a tax and now the sky falls, I think is a fallacy and something that is used to just scare us from trying to regulate these businesses.
Thank you. So one example about Google Ads, right? They're pulling, for some of them, they're pulling for Maryland. And so it actually created inconvenience for a lot of people who try to use Google Ads. I just figure out we probably need to find a way to say, they will still stay in. We put a reasonable amount there. The other question is about for a lot of startups, these kind of social media apps, they're probably not making money when they started, right? They may lose money until the year 10. And if we apply the tax on their gross income, that would be a big problem for them, right? Probably it should be net income somehow. I don't know, right? I just want to bring that up.
No, that's a great. I think startups are one of the pieces from the letter from the opposition. I will say, maybe think a little bit more and say, you know what, that's right. If this is a really successful startup that's able to get an initial round of the amount that we have, which is a very large amount, then maybe we should say, you know what, let's let them, get on their feet. Let's let them see how the market will treat them and whether or not they have longevity before we impose a tax. So I'm reasonable. I'm up for working with you on any amendments you think that could help protect startups in this area.
Sure, thank you.
Any further questions? Delegate Wells?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the bill. So I was just, because I was sitting here and I was like, okay, I could think of obviously the big ones. But I'm curious into I think some of the line of questioning that Delegate Wu had. Are there other, do you have any examples of other smaller tech companies that would be subjected to this? Or I'm wondering if, I'm just trying to get the realm of the universe, basically.
Absolutely. So the way the bill is written, we tried our best to only get the big guys in the sense because we didn't want to kind of sweep up a known really successful site that no one's using that isn't necessarily causing harm just because they're successful. You shouldn't necessarily be in this. The real intent is that we're trying to narrow this in a way to capture the folks that are being used and are causing harm to kids. So working with DLS, the numbers that we figured were the ones in which we knew the big ones were captured under, and I could not find any sites that were included. We also have exclusions around sites that sell things, so like Home Depot is not going to be impacted, like Under Armour, other places that sell things are not going to be included in this. We really tried to find a definition around what social media could be, so that it included all of Meta's platforms, all of like TikTok, all of those types of things to be in the bill.
Got it. So it's primarily, because I was getting a little lost for a second, it's primarily social media
Yes.
only, right?
It's not just a website, it is
Okay.
social media companies, yes.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
That concludes the hearing on House Bill 414, House Bill 250. Delegate Vogel.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee, I am here with House Bill 250. I don't need to lecture any of you on the importance of safe gun storage. We all know how life-saving it is when individuals who are gun owners safeguard their guns, keep them in gun safes, use gun locks. And there is a statistic that I think is just so staggering here, which is that when numerous studies have found that safe firearm storage can reduce suicide and unintentional gun deaths among children and teens by up to 54%. I am going to do something on this bill that I've never done before, which is quote favorable testimony from the NRA on this bill, which says that a tax exemption will make it easier for those on fixed incomes or with limited financial resources to acquire a storage device of their choosing. This is a bipartisan common sense bill that brings together stakeholders that often don't agree, but recognize that here we can incentivize, encourage more individuals to safely store their weapons and save lives in doing so. I urge a favorable report, and I will turn it over to my former school board member, Lynn Harris, for her testimony. Oh, you have one. Great.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lynn Harris, and I'm here today with Moms Demand Action, but I'm not speaking on behalf of Moms Demand Action, but it's just serendipitous that this bill is being heard today because I'm sure all of you have met with members of this organization coming into your offices or meeting with your staff, wearing their red shirts and talking about the gun violence impact, the impact that gun violence has in Maryland every year, the cost in lives and the cost in billions of dollars. And I have spent the past several decades as a child protection advocate, as a public education advocate, as an injury prevention advocate, but I also spent significant parts of my career as a trauma nurse. And I've seen firsthand what a gun can do to a body. And I spent 5 years at Johns Hopkins studying, among other things, injury prevention. And I had the great privilege of working alongside Dan Webster and the Center for Gun Violence Solutions, which is, we are so fortunate here in Maryland that the world's leading institute studying gun violence and its prevention is right up the street. And the two things that every act of gun violence have in common are, one, someone had access to a gun, and two, that act of gun violence was 100% preventable. And what I learned, one of the things I learned at Johns Hopkins was that one way that you can try to convince somebody to do the right thing to protect life and health is to pay them to do it, to incentivize them to take a simple common sense action. And that is what this bill does. It provides real incentives for people in Marylanders who are gun owners anyway, to ensure that those guns are stored and kept in ways that will reduce access and will prevent In that way, if people can't access those firearms, they can't commit an act of gun violence, intentional or unintentional. So I strongly urge your support for this common sense gun safety measure.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor or his panel? Okay, seeing none, thank you both very much. Mark Pennick and Kathy Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Mark Pennick. I'm the president of Maryland Shall Issue, and I'm an attorney licensed to practice in Maryland. We are in favor of this bill for all the reasons we set forth in our written testimony. Maryland legislature has enacted a series of bills within the last 2 years that are designed that actually mandate storage in an automobile. Think about that for a moment. Storage in an automobile. Where is guns more likely to be stolen than from an automobile? Stolen guns are a major problem. In Maryland, a stolen gun is treated like a theft of a TV. It's just another piece of property. There's no special penalty for stealing a firearm. The penalty for stealing a firearm less than $1,500 is probation. Second offense, probation. This bill will allow and encourage people to secure their firearms in their automobiles with easily purchased safes that are designed for automobiles. This is a no-brainer. It's not very much money. Will save undoubtedly a lot of thefts from happening from automobiles. We encourage and the committee for a favorable report. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 250. Delegate Ebersol, House Bill 328.
It's just going to confuse people.
And whoever you would like to bring up with you.
How's everyone doing? Good, good, Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. Great to be in front of you. This is, I think, my first time being in front of you, and I bring the first gambling bill before you do for the year. I'll have more, and so will others, okay? But this one is a relatively, I would say, in terms of dollar amounts, lower impact, but it's important. There are a variety of kinds of machines that are used in the state for gambling. They all look like what you think of as slot machines or VLTs, video lottery terminals, but they are not. They are slightly different in the way they administer how people win. One of them is called an ITLM, incorrect, instant ticket lottery machine. And I can get into the details, but I don't think you want me to. They are housed in veterans locations around the state, mostly on the Western Shore. There's a whole thing on the Eastern Shore, and don't talk to me about that either. It's a big mess to try to understand it. But we are looking for a slight expansion of 5 machines per place in some locations. And one of those is what are called graduate fraternities. These are ones that have names that you recognize them. They're the Greek letters. And many people refer to the ones that are mostly interested here, but not exclusively, as the Divine Nine, that would like to have these machines. They reap some benefits by having them. The breakdown of the money and where it goes is a moving target, and we can talk about that if you'd like to a little bit as well. But ultimately, if we include these graduate level fraternities and sororities, they would be able to use the money they reap from it for some limited causes, mostly scholarships and capital improvements to their facilities. And we brought this bill before you last year. I want these people to testify, but I held last year's bill and this bill side by side. I was unable to find the nuanced difference between the two. But nonetheless, I would encourage you to have a cross file of this bill as well. And please, I would urge a favorable report on this.
Good afternoon. My name is Brandon Corey Bradley. I represent nearly 20,000 Elks in the state of Maryland. Elks is a fraternal organization here and all over the U.S., so I'll just read kind of what I wrote. So as I stated, I'm here to represent more than 20,000 Elks that make up our association. It's a big honor. I'm also here to represent myself as an active member of my community, a husband and a father. I'm a lifelong resident of Anne Arundel County and the state of Maryland. I became an Elk over a decade ago because I wanted to help my community, become a model Marylander, and better myself as an American. Elks across the state have helped shape communities by donating thousands of hours, helping the less fortunate, volunteering at veterans hospitals, supporting first responders, and mentoring our youth to do their best. This year, I'm pleased to say by the end of 2024, we have given back more than $10.4 million, $10.4 million to our communities. Everyone always says we should strive to do better, and I can stand here before this committee and say, as Elks, we're committed to our communities, and that means doing everything in our power. House Bill 328 will allow Elks lodges and other fraternals on the Western Shore to continue to provide to their communities through ITLMs, instant ticket lottery machines, located in our lodges and facilities. These machines will also give the state funds to support educational programs that are important to us. Supporting House Bill 328 will allow the lodges to continue the work they're already doing within their communities. It will increase the charity that is currently being spread through Maryland, charity that comes in the form of helping a child with disability gain access to a much needed ramp, providing iPads to veterans at Green Street Hospital, or simply saying thank you to a first responder of a home-cooked meal. I and the 20,000 Elks I represent would appreciate a favorable vote.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Committee. Am I on?
Yep, you are.
I got you. My name is Kenneth Hunt. I'm the president of the Maryland-Delaware District Columbia Moose Association, and I'm here on their behalf to support this bill. The Royal Order of Moose is a fraternal, not-for-profit organization founded in 1888 on the belief that every child has a right to an education of the head and heart and a safe environment. Moose Heart, our child city, located outside of Chicago on 1,000-acre campus. Moose Haven is our retirement community for our seniors in Jacksonville, Florida. The third part of our mission is community service, which is what I'd like to talk about today. Our community service in Maryland takes on many subjects with several partners. Special Olympics, safe surfing with our Kids ID Children and Seniors program, youth awareness where we recruit high school students to go out into their communities to mentor elementary age students on various topics affecting their lives. Students are rewarded with association scholarships for their efforts and a chance to earn more on an Moose International level. Our Heart of Community project includes partnerships with many organizations, Camps for Children with Cancer. We raise funds to purchase wreaths for the annual Wreaths Across America program and organize volunteers to place them on graves in veteran cemeteries. Our members volunteer at their times at hospitals, nursing homes, senior centers, and schools. We provide activities for our veterans that are located at the Sarla Halls Veterans Home. Our association has 20 lodges all over the state of Maryland, from Cumberland down to Southern Maryland. Through the efforts of our lodges and our chapters, our Maryland End of the Year Report 2023-24, we're able to donate $742,000 in cash. 2,346 members provided service hours of 24,932 at a value of $368,362. Mileage at a value of $16,467, and for our gross total of $1,297. We want to do as much more. Like everyone in the country, inflation has increased our costs to operate our lodges. This leaves us less assets to achieve our goal to serve our communities. Passage of HB 328 will give us another source of revenue to raise funds to achieve our fraternal and community service goals. Thank you for your time, and I hope you'll support House Bill 328.
Madam Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, committees. For the record, I'm Richard Reinhardt with Percy Public Affairs. I wasn't signed up to testify. However, if there are questions from the committee, I will gladly be here online and offline at your discretion.
It's because the sponsor isn't able to answer them, just to be clear here.
We are aware of that. Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What's the sponsor's name? I have a real question.
Don't ask him, he doesn't know.
I have a real question.
That's a question I can't answer either. There you go.
So for slot machine, actually, do they have a winning probability defined by themselves from that operator, or we define that?
Okay, so you did it. You popped the cork here. All right. Internet ticket lottery machines have pre-programmed numbers in them. It's not unlike buying a scratch-off ticket. The winnings are already set on a tape that's inside the machine. And so one person plays, it looks like everything's flashing, but basically what comes up on their tape is whether they win or lose. And so it is pre-programmed how much they win and how much they lose.
So one example for the Rocky Gap, what's the number there?
That's a different machine, okay? That's a little more random, that machine. That machine's programmed to win a certain number of times. I think the number, we've changed it, but I believe it's 92. No, I wish Buckle were here. It's like 92, but those machines are different. They are random, but they are programmed so that even though they're random, they will control the number of times that they give away money.
I see. Thank you.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick, what type of payment do these machines take? Is it?
There's another kind of machine. There's a third kind, bingo machines, okay? They're programmed, but they're not programmed on a piece of tape. They're programmed electronically. You could think of it as a thumb drive. I don't believe it is, but that would be a good way to do it. It's pushed in there, and it has a certain number of victories also allowed. It's money for money. You know, it's just like you would do when you put money. I don't.
Is it like cash, credit card,
I don't
debit
play
card?
the slots, so I don't know for sure. Because I don't find them to be a winning proposition. I like to have a chance of winning, but I don't know, Rich. Do you put money straight into them?
I can actually provide a visual representation of what these machines look like, along with some better descriptions offline.
Perfect. That would be great. Thank you very much.
You know, most slots at casinos work on, you don't really put money in, but you get a credit that you push in, and it adds money to your card and off your card, so probably like that. Sure.
Delegate Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Ebersol, for bringing this to us. I have one question as relates to the target groups. I know that there are some letters of opposition citing the conflict or potential loss of revenue, but specifically, you discussed the Divine Nine, just for fraternities.
Which is a colloquial term, but we know what it means.
That's right, that's right. So how do you see the application of this legislation being utilized specifically by Divine Nine groups?
Thanks for the opportunity to answer that question. You will hear some testimony after we're here. You can see that if you look behind me, you'll see several representatives of other gambling interests in the state, and they will tell you that this will be competition and perhaps a challenge to their ability to raise money. If you talk to groups that do this, they will tell you that they have a different audience that's coming to them, a different group of people. They feel they would not cannibalize the business of those other organizations.
All right, seeing no other questions. Delegate Ebersol, I believe that's all your in-person favorable, but if there's someone that we missed that is favorable, please do let us know.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll now call up one favorable with amendment. Sushant Sid.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sushant Sid, representing Atlantic Bingo. I'm here in support of House Bill 328 with amendments. But I want to be clear that our support is contingent upon those amendments being adopted because we believe that the ITLM program needs to be changed. This committee has heard this bill in prior years and others that relate to the ITLM program. Here's the problem. The way the legislation was crafted to create the program effectively guarantees a monopoly for one vendor that manufactures the current instant ticket lottery machines. The original statute references a Court of Appeals decision, Chesapeake v. Riddle, that specifies pre-printed paper be used in the operation of the machine. We believe this to be wrong and bad policy. In addition, this limitation from 20+ years ago mandates the use of essentially obsolete technology. Hence, that's why there's no competition for the manufacture of these machines. With my testimony, I've submitted proposed amendments to this bill that would remove the mandate for the use of pre-printed paper and allow for what is called print-on-the-fly technology. This change does not impact the nature of the game in that it is still a predetermined outcome, as Delegate Ebersol pointed out. It is different from a slot machine. The other amendments restructure the way the lottery administers the program. One, amendments call for the lottery to select at least 5 vendors that would manufacture these machines. And 2, it would allow for the veterans and fraternal halls to actually select which machines they want in their halls. And with that, I encourage adoption of amendments and a favorable report.
Any questions for this witness? All right, seeing none, thank you for your time. We do have 2 in opposition. Calling up Hannah Gargiola and Marta Harting.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Marta Harding. I'm here today on behalf of MGM National Harbor in respectful opposition to the bill. You have the written testimony, the joint written testimony from the state's 6 casinos in your packet. We agree with the sponsor. These machines are, to the player, indistinguishable from slot machines. If you want to see them in operation, the lottery actually has a whole part of their website that describes the program, shows what the machines look like. There's even a video where you can see how they play. They feature, spinning reels, stereo sound, ticket in, ticket out functionality. My understanding is you can accumulate winnings over time as you play them. So they're very much to the player like a slot machine. And as a result of that, they're going to compete with slot machine play at casinos. To be clear, this bill authorizes, if fully implemented, 1,200 of these machines in the state. And that's on top of the already, my understanding is about 500 machines that exist at veterans halls currently. To be clear, or to set the context for that, that number of machines is more than 3 of the state's casinos have. The 3 smallest casinos have fewer machines each than this bill would authorize. This competition, we think, is contrary to the state's interest in 2 ways. Number 1, maximizing casino revenue. The state has the 2nd highest tax rate in the country on casinos. It funds incredibly important state priorities. We've generated over $6 billion in the Education Trust Fund. And the other component that I think is really important is that the state wants to ensure robust, responsible gaming controls are in place. The most notable example of that is the voluntary exclusion list that casinos, under the oversight of the lottery, have to enforce. And this is very real, and I just want to give this example. In one recent year, MGM, National Harbor, excluded 160 people who believed they had such a problem that they put themselves on the list, yet came to the casino to game. None of these controls are in place at these facilities, and these folks could find another place to game in the absence of casinos. So for those reasons, Madam Chair, we would request an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair Wilkins, members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, Hannah Gargiola with Compass Advocacy, here today representing Live Casino in respectful opposition of this bill. Marta mentioned how the bill goes against the state's interest in 2 ways, the Education Trust Fund funding and also the responsible gaming. But a lot of the proponents of the bill mentioned a lot of the charities that the revenue generated from this bill would go to. But the legislature, in its wisdom, when they stood up the very first casino program, issued provisions within the bill that said that much of the revenue did go to local local grants, local nonprofits. So just last year, Live Casino gave $20 million to area nonprofits, and those include veterans halls, veterans groups, domestic violence centers, housing, Special Olympics, et cetera. So the casinos really are doing their part, being a community partner, and for those reasons, we respectfully encourage an unfavorable report.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for this panel? All right, seeing none, thank you so much for your time. This ends the hearing on House Bill 328. We will now call up the final bill. Delegate Lehman, House Bill 337. If you have a panel, you can please have them join you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we will try to keep this as tight as possible. I do have several witnesses. I'm going to call up my panel of Vicki Dallaire, Leah Paley, and Shannon Mouton. We have 2 more in person and a few virtual witnesses. So I would like to get started, if I might. So good afternoon, Madam Chair and esteemed members of the Ways and Means Committee. It's great to be here. For the record, I'm Delegate Mary Lehman, and I'm asking for a favorable report on HB 337, Laurel Racecourse Local Impact Grant, which would establish supplemental local aid from the state lottery to assist residents living on and in the immediate vicinity of Laurel Racecourse. So what the bill does is it's targeted legislation for a limited period until Laurel Park closes or backstretch workers have relocated to either the new Shamrock Farm training facility or the renovated Pimlico race track. The grant would provide $500,000 annually from the proceeds of the racetrack's lottery game to be shared between Anne Arundel County, Howard County, and the city of Laurel. The Anne Arundel funds would support critical services for backstretch workers who live either on-site or in the surrounding community. These programs would also be open to non-racetrack workers who live within a mile of the track. They have to focus on health and mental health services, individual and family counseling, addiction treatment, social services, nutrition and wellness programs, and transportation to medical appointments and services. The bill requires that Anne Arundel distribute its portion of the funds through grants to qualified nonprofits. The bill addresses pressing needs in our racing communities while establishing strong accountability measures. The funds must be used for direct services, not administrative overhead. So why this program and why now? Backstretch workers are vital to Maryland's thoroughbred racing industry as it undergoes a series of historic changes that were adopted by this legislature last year and are aimed at preserving and revitalizing operations. With the closure of Pimlico for rebuilding and the movement of the 2026 Preakness Stakes to Laurel Racecourse, the backstretch communities of both race courses have now been consolidated at Laurel Park, while a new Pimlico and a separate training facility are constructed. The majority of these workers are immigrants. They hold H-2B visas. Their access to basic welfare and social services for themselves and their families is a struggle because of language barriers, transportation challenges, and limited resources. They have dedicated their lives to the care of thoroughbred racehorses. This is a job that can be dangerous with little time off, and hundreds of them are far away from their families who depend on their financial support. In closing, I want to emphasize this is a modest investment for a limited period, and the impact would come from the racetrack's lottery game. It's a Keno-style game that had profits of $69.5 million in 2024. That is the second highest grossing of all lottery games behind only scratch-offs. The bill will help ensure that these backstretch workers and residents in neighboring communities have essential support services. I respectfully ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Leah Paley. I'm the CEO of the Anne Arundel County Food Bank, and we're here today to ask you to vote favorably for House Bill 337. Delegate Lehman asked me to shed some light on the need that we are seeing within Anne Arundel County within the food insecurity space. We have been around for almost 40 years serving Anne Arundel County residents experiencing food insecurity. That includes the 20724 zip code of Laurel and those residing within that general area. the number of the number of people experiencing food insecurity currently in Anne Arundel County sits well over 61,000 individuals. It's 30% higher than it was just 1 year ago, which is quite astonishing. We're averaging across our entire network 51,000 instances of assistance, and that includes food, diapers, senior incontinence supplies, vital services that people need every day to survive. Within the Laurel area specifically, over 6,800 individual instances of food and/or diaper assistance just within the first 6 months of the fiscal year. And I wanted to point out that we have been recipients of Laurel Racecourse funding to the tune of $50,000 for the last 2 years, but we have blown through that money in just 4 months. We have fully expended it on all of these vital resources. And so we're asking you to consider adding more money so that we can support the uptick in need that we're already seeing, that we anticipate will continue to happen, so that we can meet the needs of the community. So thank you for your consideration.
Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Mouton. I serve as the Executive Director for Laurel Advocacy Referral Services in Laurel, Maryland. We provide services to low-income and homeless individuals in the Laurels of Prince George's County, Howard County, and Anne Arundel County. That being said, we are within a mile of Laurel Racecourse. Many backstretch workers are our current clients who we see on a monthly basis to get food support. And we also provide other kinds of support for them, such as anyone needs help with getting any sort of referrals for mental or physical help or health needs. We can help them with that. If they need to reach out to other sources and services in the area, we provide those services as well. In the last fiscal year, we provided over 21,000 bags of groceries. The backstretch workers are part of that 21,000. That actually equates to over 108,000 meals that we provided. That is the depth of the food insecurity that my colleague and friend Leah pointed out. It is not getting any better. A bag of groceries, even at the wholesale rates that we're able to provide, is still $26 per person. And so we would ask for your support of this bill.
This is interesting. Okay. Hello. I normally don't use a mic, so I'm going to read because I talk a lot. All right, so thank you all for having me here today. My name is Vicki Dallaire, and I'm writing to express my support of House Bill 337, the State Lottery Fund, Laurel Racecourse Local Impact Aid. I'm a born and raised Maryland resident, missions director for the Church at Severn Run, and the executive director of Love Wins Movement, a nonprofit for-impact organization based in Anne Arundel County. So I believe starting on a personal level as a resident is crucial to understanding the why, because I'm convinced, like myself, I had no idea what the struggle was. I would drive by, see the horses, and think, oh, they're so pretty, and had no idea what the lifestyle was or the challenges that faced this community. So on a professional level, it wasn't until I connected with Chaplain Ron from Storehouse Ministries, and he graciously introduced us to the issues, the pockets of poverty, and the issues that we had been unable to see before that time. Discovering that we were like-minded organizations, meaning most of us are unable to look upon suffering and do nothing, we've been involved ever since. We've become familiar with the backstretched community issues, such as consistent uphill struggles with accomplishing daily life tasks, working, taking care of their families, maintaining good physical, mental, and spiritual health, daunting schedules with the workday often starting at 3 a.m., extending well into the evening, increasing the level of difficulty for someone to access services, community support, medical care, and other assistance. Living conditions that demonstrate glaring indicators of living far below the poverty line, significant challenges in physical and mental health, abundance of family stressors, the lack of supportive community, which often leads to depression, further isolation, drug and alcohol addiction, the list goes on and on. Lack of transportation, language barriers, cultural fears with no tangible option or the time to put into obtaining education, resources, or systems of support. So at this point, why do we ask for more funding? Because the scale of the need in this community is too large to fully describe, and existing funding opportunities and resources cannot effectively address the needs of this population. Many funding streams are categorically restrictive and highly competitive and have well-established applicants, which is not a bad thing, but there's a visible gap in the missing out from those benefits of these funds. And I'll stop there because I talk too much.
Second.
Are there any questions? Oh, are there any questions? Okay, thank you. I will move to the next group of folks. Jose Manuel Hernandez. Ronald Singh. Are you Lisa? Lisa Garrett, no? Okay, well, I didn't call all of you, so just tell me your name, because it's
I'm Mary
confusing.
Kay Vavasor.
I can't hear you.
Mary Kay Vavasor.
Okay, what is your name?
Ronald, my name is Ronald Singh, Chaplain Ronald Singh.
I don't have you on here. Ronaldson?
Singh.
Singh? Oh, Singh. And what is your name?
Manuel Gallegos.
Okay.
Gallegos
Okay,
Hernández.
you can go for 2 minutes, please.
Me?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I thank you for giving me this chance to speak today. My name is Ronald Singh. I'm a retired jockey and current chaplain associated with Laurel Racetrack. I'm here today to implore you to support House Bill 337 and vote in favor of this critical funding for the racetrack itself. When you think about horse racing in Maryland, you might think about the Preakness as the prestige that it presents itself to all of us. But I'm here to shed a light on the backstretch worker who makes all that possible. I saw a great need at the track concerning food security, immigration issues. I noticed what little support there was available for them. I took it upon myself to do something about it. I host a weekly church service while I provide a full meal for about 40 people who attend, and I'm fortunate enough to have the support of the Loved Ones Pantry movement to try to reach the 400 residents, 1,000 plus other workers, and another 150 families who have children who are not allowed to live on a racetrack. I do this because the workers live on a race that live on a are not allowed to cook and make their own food. I don't believe that simply feeding people is enough. I also help them with social services such as immigration assistance, health insurance, tax preparation, and transportation services. I also provide mental health assistance. I'm interested in providing full support for the racetrack community. In the last 13 years, I've grown this important work from a simple prayer group with modest food options to a full functioning nonprofit. Now, while we have come a long way, there are still more needs to be met. With the passing of this crucial bill, and possibly the possibility exists for me to be able to do a lot more for this neglected community. I thank you for your consideration at this time.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Manuel Gallegos. I've been working in the racetrack, Laurel Racetrack, for 35 years. And the last 10 years, I find Chaplain Pastor Ronald, and he helps me a lot and teach me a lot about God, told me about God, and my life changed a lot because it's difficult to live in the racetrack and working in the racetrack. But the pastor come and teach me and told me about God, and I've been very happy, and thank you.
Thank you. And is there a Weston Hamilton here? No? Okay. We have two folks that are virtual. So
Thank you, Chair Atterbury and Vice Chair Wilkins. My name is Mary Kay Vavasor. I live in the Laurel-Beltsville area. I grew up around thoroughbred racing. My family is from Saratoga Springs.
And I spend August there visiting the track, and I have a lot of friends and a lot of family members who are active participants as owners and breeders, et cetera. And I've been an active advocate for thoroughbred aftercare for the last 20 years. I've testified before the House a couple of times on bills that Carol Krim had introduced. Had a very small role in starting the Beyond the Wire track-based aftercare program that the Jockey Club operates. And I also own a thoroughbred mare that I rescued and I pay to have her taken care of at one of the sanctuary farms in Maryland. So that was really my advocacy focus, was on thoroughbreds. And I sort of came to this awareness of the needs of the backstretch workers very much by happenstance. Last August, I was in Saratoga and I was visiting a friend, a trainer, who was very close to death. He had been diagnosed with colon cancer 4 months before. His name was Chuck Simon. And Chuck is one of these people, he's not widely known in the general public, but he's a legend within the racing industry for his intelligence and his very plain spokenness. He's trained a lot of trainers that are well known. And I asked Chuck, what would he tell Maryland with its investment in invigorating itself? What would he tell the leaders to do? He had two suggestions. He said, run more race days, because thoroughbreds need to race to learn how to be racehorses. And the second thing he said was take better care of the backstretch workers. And that's the first time I'd ever really had their needs sort of brought to my attention. I've spent a lot of time since talking to members of the community, and everyone agrees that the backstretch workers, they deserve our support, and it's going to be critical to the success of Maryland racing.
Thank you. We do have two folks that are here virtually. First, I'll call Hugh McMahon.
No, here.
Hopefully there. Should be on Zoom.
Okay, Mr. Richardson, for 2 minutes, please.
Hi, Chair Atterbury and members of the committee. I can't thank you guys enough for letting us speak on the backstretch workers at Laurel. It's fantastic to see Delegate Lehman and Mary Kay Vavasauer, how much passion they have for our backstretch, and that really is our focus. You know, that's kind of my passion as well. I just left the Horseman's Health System, which is really a really unique primary care facility that we built from scratch on the Laurel Park backstretch. And we've completely funded this program out of industry funds. And I looked through the files today, and we have almost 700 patients that we've seen over the course since we've set up this program. When we started that program, the doctors' feedback to us, because we have doctors from the MedStar Health Network, and one of their feedback to us was our care needs to stretch beyond the primary care, the medical needs of our backstretch, but into dental care. That's when I was made aware of this Laurel Park Impact Grant funding. We actually applied for that last year, and we were able to secure funding to bring the mobile dentist unit, which is a local mobile dentistry unit, onto our backstretch and provide free dental care for our backstretch workers. And we're so thrilled that Delegate Lehman is looking to expand this program as well through House Bill 337. And we urge the committee to give a favorable report on House Bill 337.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Okay, seeing no questions. Okay. Is Hugh McMahon there?
He's not.
Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, well, if there are no questions, thank you very much. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 337, and that concludes the bill hearings for the Ways and Means Committee today. Thank you.
Hello? Hello? April Miller? April Miller?